We all love unicorns, those legendary creatures famous for their beauty. You're now thinking of a white horse with a spiraling horn on its forehead, and there's probably a rainbow somewhere nearby. But what are the origins of this image? And more importantly, can it be true? Well, yes and no. Let us start from the beginning. The name. It comes from Latin. Unicorn translates as one horn. Today, there is one land animal that fits the bill, the rhinoceros. The Greek name for a unicorn is monoceros, which again means one horn. So it all fits neatly. But wait, isn't a unicorn a kind of horse? We need to call in science to resolve the issue. Scientists have discovered a skull of an animal that could have been the real unicorn and roamed the earth some 30,000 years ago. The animal resembled a huge, hairy rhinoceros, nothing like the image of a unicorn we have today. It was 2 times heavier than a giraffe, and its diet consisted of grass, a lot of grass. But the skull the scientists found in Central Asia revealed another surprising fact: the animal's age. Previous research pointed to the fact that the species went extinct 350,000 years ago. This meant that our ancestors never shared the same living space with this oversized rhinoceros. But the skull was dated much later. This dates the animal right around the time when humans were already there. This is where the legend begins. Imagine you're a prehistoric human who had just seen a unicorn. What would you do? It's not like you can take out a smartphone and snap a picture of it. No, you would probably paint it on a cave wall. Such drawings have survived to the present day. In France, there's an image of an animal that seems to have a single horn. It's in the Hall of the Bulls. All the other animals there have 2 wavy horns, but the mysterious spotted animal has 2 lines on its head. Do these double lines represent a single horn? Is this the famous unicorn? Perhaps. The name of the drawing is the Unicorn Panel. But images of unicorns don't only exist in cave drawings. In the Indus Valley, scientists have found various seals featuring a mythical animal with a single horn. Ancient Greek writers believed that unicorns lived in India. Back then, this region of the world was exotic to them. Although ancient Greeks never saw a unicorn, they had a pretty detailed description of the animal. They even recorded that the meat from this creature had a bitter taste. But was it a horse or a rhinoceros? Neither. For Greeks, the unicorn was a kind of a donkey. Go figure. In Chinese mythology, there's a similar creature. Its name translates into English, means male-female. The animal's description resembles a unicorn. A single horn on its forehead, the tail of an ox, and the body of a deer. It feeds on vegetation, just like the ancient rhinoceros from Central Asia. When the first giraffe was presented to the Ming Emperor, they described it as a unicorn. The ruler concluded that the animal definitely wasn't the mythical unicorn, but the legend lived on in that part of the world. The modern Japanese word for giraffe comes from the Chinese word for the unicorn-like creature. Ancient Persians also knew about the existence of unicorns. There's a picture of a unicorn in their capital city, but the fun part is that it has 2 large wings. Seems odd, but the Persians also never saw a unicorn in person. For them, like for the Greeks, it was a being that lived outside the known world. That's the reason why we're so fascinated by unicorns today. We find accounts of such creatures in the writings of Aristotle and even Julius Caesar. These famous people claimed that animals resembling unicorns lived in the forests of Germany. The modern image of a unicorn originated in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance in Europe. People back then had quite the imagination. They showed unicorns in book decorations. According to ancient scribes, this animal was ferocious. Its main enemy was the elephant. The people in medieval times thought highly of an animal they had never seen. It was quick and dangerous, so it needed to be hunted down. But how on earth do you lure a unicorn? With the help of a fair maiden, of course. This sounds strange today, but keep in mind that the Dark Ages were a peculiar period in history. Back then, doctors used leeches as legit medical treatment. the perfect setting for the myth about the unicorn. The story gets wilder. A maiden would go inside a forest. A unicorn would spot her and jump inside her lap. After it fell asleep, hunters would appear. They would then capture the unicorn and take it to the king. But why were Europeans impressed by the unicorn? Because of its horn. They believed that it had magical power. A unicorn's horn could detect poison in food and drinks. When you ground it into a powder, the horn had the power to whiten teeth. These were just some of the magical traits given to a unicorn's horn. The folklore was so strong that Europeans even had a backup for the times they couldn't get their hands on a real horn. That must have happened quite often, and they used real narwhal horns as a replacement. These are whales with a large, tusk-like tooth coming from their mouth. In England, the unicorn was a symbol of something you could never see or catch. In the 16th and 17th centuries, it became associated with imagination. That's when the rainbow came into the picture. The Victorians were the first to connect the symbol of a rainbow to the unicorn. Its first appearance in fantasy literature was in the novel Through the Looking Glass for young readers. That was the sequel to Lewis Carroll's more famous work, Alice in Wonderland. The unicorn now stood for hope and purity. Still, there were no recorded sightings of the animal in real life. At least none that could be confirmed by science. In 1663, a German scientist claimed to have found a unicorn skeleton. The story seemed too good to be true, and it was. Someone made the skeleton from the bones of various animals and tried to pass it off as a unicorn. Today, the fake skeleton is displayed in the local Natural History Museum. The people weren't gonna give up and searched for unicorns everywhere they went. In the 20th century, a British explorer discovered a new species in Africa. It had a small bump in the corner of its head. The public nicknamed the mysterious animal the African unicorn. But this wasn't true. Now we know this is an okapi. It's most closely related to a giraffe, but it looks like a zebra in the back part of its body, and its head resembles a deer. It's an impressive animal, but it's not even close to the elusive unicorn. One of the latest alleged sightings happened in 1991. An Austrian biologist reported seeing a unicorn in a forest in Germany. The legend says that these animals live in enchanted forests, but there's just one tiny issue: the total lack of physical evidence. In fact, there are historians who claim that unicorns never existed. The animal was simply a misinterpretation of cave drawings. Perhaps all those ancient images of unicorns were just two-horned animals shown from the side. It could be so. It's hard to add the third dimension to a 2D image. But then, in 2013, the unicorn reappeared. Not the animal, though the word. An American venture capitalist came up with the term to refer to startup companies with a value of over $1 billion. She chose this word because these companies are as rare as the mythical animal. There are only 1,000 of such enterprises in the whole world, and you've probably heard of the most famous one, Elon Musk's SpaceX. Once upon a time, in the deep blue sea, there was a giant monster called the Kraken. People believed it lived in the waters near Norway and Greenland. The first time anyone wrote about the Kraken was a long, long time ago. It was a man named Erik Pontoppidan from Denmark in a book called The Natural History of Norway. He wrote that the Kraken looked like a huge octopus or cuttlefish, and it could pull ships down to the bottom of the ocean. Later on, people started to imagine the Kraken as a giant squid. Even today, the story of the Kraken is still very popular, and it can be found in books, movies, or games. The stories surrounding the Kraken might sound like nothing more than local folklore or myths, but in 2004, the first giant squid was photographed. This amazing discovery was made by a team of Japanese scientists who had been working for years to capture a live giant squid on camera. They used a baited line with a camera attached to it to lure the giant squid to the surface. They also used a special lure that mimicked the light patterns of a small creature to attract the giant squid. After several days of waiting, the team finally got lucky. The image showed the giant creature's long tentacles and large eyes, as well as its distinctive body shape. It didn't stop there, though. In 2012, another team of scientists, this time from National Geographic, filmed a live giant squid for the first time in its natural habitat. This footage gave the world a much better understanding of the giant squid and its behavior. You've surely heard about this next myth too. It was said to be the most beautiful and wealthy city to ever exist. Its entrance was decorated with marble statues. The architecture of this city was sturdy and imposing. The depictions of Greek deities, beautifully painted, could be seen almost everywhere. The city has been the subject of debate for historians and fiction writers alike. We still have very little information on the location of the ancient city of Atlantis. That is, if it even existed. Since it was supposedly swallowed by the sea in its entirety, it's no wonder some curious minds linked it to other mysterious locations on Earth, even to the Bermuda Triangle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's not yet confirmed that Atlantis truly existed. The idea of an island sinking into the sea due to an unknown disaster is a widespread idea in mythology and popular culture. However, it is possible that the story of Atlantis was inspired by actual events, such as the sinking of islands like Helike. On this island, located in the Gulf of Corinth, there was a thriving ancient Greek city. It was known for its prosperity and wealth, and it was also an important spiritual headquarters for the Greeks. The city was home to a building dedicated to the immortal Poseidon, and it was believed that he protected the city himself. However, one fateful night in 373 BCE, a massive earthquake struck the region. The ground shook violently, and the city was swallowed up by the sea in a matter of minutes. The residents of Helike, unable to escape the disaster, all disappeared under the waves. The sinking of Helike was a great tragedy for the ancient Greeks, and it was seen as a punishment from the higher spirits. Many believed that the city's prosperity and pride had angered them, and they had punished the city by destroying it. The city remained underwater for centuries, and it was not until the 20th century that it was rediscovered by modern archaeologists. Today, the most part of the city is still underwater. While we're on the subject of Greek myths, we have to talk about the famous city of Troy. This was a legendary city in ancient Greece. Scientists believed for years that it had been made up by writers and philosophers. According to an ancient Greek legend, the city was founded by the Trojan prince Paris, who stole Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta, and brought her back to Troy. This event sparked a huge conflict between the Greeks and the Trojans that lasted for 10 years. One of the most famous stories from the Trojan conflict is the tale of the Trojan horse, a large wooden horse that the Greeks built and left outside the city gates as a gift to the Trojans. The Trojans, believing the horse to be a symbol of peace, brought it into the city. But inside the horse, there were Greek fighters who, once inside the city, opened the gates and let the rest of the Greeks in. The Trojans had no escape this time, and they were ultimately defeated. The city was rediscovered in the 19th century in modern-day Turkey. It's located near the Scamander River. Today, this region is an archaeological site and draws a lot of tourists each year. The following myth is indeed sad, but it might have some truth to it too. It is said that years ago, the Solomon Islands in the Pacific Ocean, there lived a man that was deeply in love with his wife. The woman, however, decided to leave him for another man and moved to the nearby island of Tionamanu. Heartbroken and filled with rage, the man sought out a curse to take his revenge. He set out on a journey in a canoe, determined to bring destruction to the island where his wife had fled. Upon arriving at Tionamanu, the man planted 2 taro plants. One he kept for himself. According to the instructions, once his own plant began to sprout, disaster was supposed to strike the island, and it did. The man watched from a mountaintop as a series of waves smashed into the island, causing it to sink beneath the waves. Tionamanu was a real place, but it's not entirely clear when it disappeared. It is said that waves alone could not have washed away this small but tall volcanic island. But an undersea earthquake could have probably done it. The island was balanced on the edge of an unstable underwater slope. The most reasonable explanation is that a huge earthquake shook the region, which made the weak foundation collapse and caused the island to sink beneath the waves. This island-sized landslide would have pushed a lot of water out of the way, which would have created a series of massive mega-tsunamis. So, although those vengeful waves could have occurred, they were most likely the result of another event. And that sad man, with his curse fulfilled, returned to the Solomon Islands with his heart still heavy after the loss of his wife. We won't leave the ocean waves just yet, but we're heading over to Hawaii. A legend has it that once upon a time, there was a Hawaiian higher spirit named Pele. She was the protector of volcanic fire and was said to have arrived at the islands to flee from her older sister. To conceal herself, Pele hid in various hideaways on each of the islands until she finally concealed herself in a pit at Kilauea. This is why, according to the legend, Kilauea is known as Hawaii's active volcanic center today. The story may be visually stunning, but in reality, volcanism is caused by the superheated mantle that triggers a lot of melting beneath the surface of our planet. People also say that Pele's tears and hair can be found scattered around the volcano. However, reality has more to do with physics than with folklore. When lava cools rapidly, particularly when it gets quenched in water or a small amount of it flies through the air, it turns into volcanic glass. When it stretches and cools down, it can sometimes form tear-shaped droplets, or it can get stretched so thin that it begins to look like strands of hair. We know today that Hawaii is a volcanic region known for its fire mountains, with huge streams of lava shooting up from active vents. It's no wonder it became an ideal origin place for the story of two sisters and their sibling rivalry.
Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on his throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their three-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them.
Legend goes that a dwarf named Fafnir was famous for his strength and courage. Because of his qualities, he was tasked with protecting their kingdom. Dwarves were known to gather a lot of wealth, so a bit of added security was a must. I mean, they lived in a house made from gold and precious gems. But Fafnir also had another special talent. He was able to shapeshift. Tricked by Loki, the Norse spirit of mischief, Fafnir was taken over by his greed and the shine of his father's treasure. He decided he did not want to share any of it, not even with his father or his brothers. He stole it and ran away all by himself to a place he'd be hard to find, the middle of the desert. To protect his wealth, Fafnir transformed into a huge dragon. His new appearance looked like a huge snake, powerful and scary. His magical powers did not end there, though. Because the dragon couldn't fly, he also spread poison all around his new home, so no one had a chance to survive if they wanted to take his gold away. Fafnir was soon defeated by a young hero named Sigurd. The legend of Fafnir tries to explain why family is more important than greed. It also shows the many magical powers dragons possess. But the most interesting part is that it's quite a good example of how dragons came to be in our tales. But hey, this is just one of the many stories mentioning dragons. Just switch on your TV or peek into any bookstore, and you'll surely stumble upon dragons somewhere. Variations of dragon-like creatures have been described in stories from all over the world, from Asia to Northern Europe. Most of these creatures are depicted with reptile-like bodies, wings, and claws. And the scariest trait of them all, they can breathe fire out of their mouths. The name of these creatures comes from the Latin word draconum, which translates to huge serpent. But let's take a trip down memory lane to see how it all started. An Asian historian, for example, discovered some fossils back in the 4th century BCE and decided that he'd stumbled upon dragons. It's easy to understand why he got so confused if you look at a fossilized stegosaurus. It was 30 feet long, 14 feet tall, and covered in armored plates and spikes. The Nile crocodile might have gotten mistaken for a dragon too. It still exists today and lives in sub-Saharan Africa. But it may have been more popular in ancient times. When reaching maturity, Nile crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet long. But that's not all. It can even walk with its body off the ground, and some were even pictured standing on their 2 back legs. Goannas are dragon-like lizards that live in Australia. Large as they are, they also have razor-sharp teeth and claws, and are also known to even produce venom. It's easy to see why goannas may be the source for the Australian version of dragons. When humans first discovered whale bones back in the day, we had no idea these animals lived in the sea. Given their size, we surely must have thought they were dangerous. And because we rarely see whales, if we don't go underwater of course, they were poorly understood and easily mistaken for dragons too. Probably the most interesting source of dragon mythology is actually the human brain. In a book called An Instinct for Dragons, there was a theory which claimed that dragons existed in almost all ancient cultures because we had evolved to fear large predators to survive. We aren't the only mammals to do this. Monkeys have an innate fear of snakes and large cats too, for example. When you combine these natural traits with folklore, you get a lot of dragon stories everywhere, adapted to each region. Reptilian beasts with magical powers date back as far as the origins of human civilization itself. I'm talking about ancient Mesopotamia. Humans back then used to believe in all sorts of creatures, but their head spirit was Marduk, the patron of the city of Babylon. If you look at the artwork from back then, Marduk was depicted with a snake-like dragon at his side. It could be either nice or vengeful, depending on what mood it was in. If you want to sign up to become a dragon, the first thing they'll ask you at the interview will be if you can breathe fire, of course. So scientists have tried to look into some ways that could make it real for dragons to breathe out fire without damaging their throats. To do that, they examined the bombardier beetle. This eccentric insect can pack up some really hot substances in its belly. Once the creature gets bothered by something, it shoots out a fiery load of chemicals. In all fairness, it's not really fire, but it does burn, so it's close enough. Going back to dragons, they'd need to have similar glands in their throats to produce the same effect. But where do dragons come from? They didn't just appear out of nowhere, regardless of the source you consult. Some tales, like that of Fafnir, say that even humans can turn into dragons. But the most popular theory is that dragons start out as eggs. Some sources even draft a series of stages a dragon has to go through during its life. Everything starts with hatching. Dragons are said to eat their way out of those shells and break the sides of the egg. Then there's the wormling stage, which is what dragon specialists, or dragonologists if you like, call a newly hatched dragon. It's still small and weak, but don't worry, it can take care of itself pretty well. The rest of a dragon's life stages are pretty self-explanatory. There are grown-up dragons, then ancient ones. A dragon's life ends when it reaches the twilight stage. Some sources claim dragons never stopped growing. Others even say they never reach the end of their lives. They just pass on to another type of spiritual existence. Dragons are known to be the symbol of a lot of different things, but that all depends on their origin. In some regions of Asia, they are known to bring luck, power, and wealth. To become a powerful warrior in Britain, you'd need to first defeat a dragon. That's why you often see them on flags. The flag of Wales, for example, has a large red dragon on a green and white background. Western stories aren't as nice to dragons. They are often seen as evil and vengeful. Another myth associated with dragons is that they love gold and precious stones. This greedy side of their temperament seems to date back to ancient Greece, where dragons were tasked with guarding treasures. Some of these guarding dragons were seen in such tales as The Hobbit and in the Harry Potter series. As for dragons' magical abilities, they also vary a lot. Some were said to have blood with supernatural properties. Some were rumored to be able to speak. Others were famous for their wisdom. A lot of dragons in ancient literature could fly or shapeshift, even into humans. Some real-life creatures got their names thanks to bearing a resemblance to dragons, like the dragonfly that has more than 5,000 subspecies we know about. It got its name from folklore tales, as Europeans in the Middle Ages saw it as an evil insect. Dragonflies were accused of some really nasty things, like biting people's eyes and mouths. But the creature that resembles mythical dragons most is a reptile called the flying dragon. They're seen in wooded areas of Southeast Asia. They don't really have wings per se, but parts of their ribs are elongated to support some extra skin that allows them to leap through the air between trees. Those wings are also brightly colored and contrast with their brown bodies.
In 1952, an Air Force plane called C-124 Globemaster II crashed into a big mountain while flying from Washington to Alaska. Sadly, everyone on board, 52 people in total, didn't make it. The bad weather at the time made it hard to find the crash site, and even later, any attempts to locate it failed. But in 2012, a helicopter crew doing a training mission spotted the pieces of the crashed plane on a glacier called Colony Glacier in Alaska. They started looking for more pieces and confirmed it was indeed the missing plane. Since then, every summer for about a decade, different military groups have been helping in an operation called Colony Glacier. They've managed to identify 40 out of the 52 people whose lives were lost in the crash. The soldiers taking part in this mission take their promise seriously to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They believe it's their duty to bring back those who didn't make it. Another discovery comes from the Alps. In 1991, some hikers exploring the picturesque Alps stumbled upon a human body. It was half frozen in ice at the top of a mountain pass between Italy and Austria. At first, the local police thought it might be a mountaineering accident, but in a few weeks, archaeologists started claiming that this guy might have lived more than 5,000 years ago. They eventually gave the frozen fellow the nickname Ötzi. He was named after the nearby Ötztal Valley. He's become quite famous as the oldest ice mummy on record. Ötzi's frozen state might not be as unique as we thought, and that's where things get really cool. Archaeologists have another theory. See, at first, everyone was convinced that Ötzi marked the start of a cooler period because he had been frozen in the ice without any interruptions since he had lost his life. Yet, over the past few decades, glaciers and ice patches worldwide have been melting away like ice cream on a hot summer day. Not just Ötzi, but other ancient relics like bodies, hunting gear, horse droppings, and even ancient skis started to appear. So, archaeologists say there are similar sites. They found quite a few, and they all fit perfectly into this growing field of glacial archaeology. It seems like as the world warms up, it will show even more ancient secrets from the deep freeze. Moving on to another amazing discovery. In 2018, William Taylor and Nick Jarman were exploring the snowy slopes of Mongolia's Altai Mountains. They found an ancient treasure trove hidden in the ice. Inside the trove, they found a well-preserved 3,000-year-old arrow shaft adorned with ochre markings. It was in pristine condition, a rarity for organic items that old. They found other items too, like a bronze arrowhead with bits of animal sinew still attached. All of these relics had been untouched for hundreds of years, since they had been locked in the ice. In Mongolia, rising temperatures have melted ice patches that remained frozen for centuries. Similar discoveries have been made in the Yukon, US, Italy, Siberia, and Norway. Thousands of sites have been identified. Yet, scientists are racing against time to document and preserve these artifacts before they're lost forever. The study of these artifacts challenges the definition of these environments as wildernesses and shows how indigenous people coexisted with nature there. Sometimes people find simple items too, as simple as a sandal. This one, discovered on one of central Norway's mountain passes, indicates that people used this route roughly 1,700 years ago. This suggests that there was less snow and ice in that area back then. The sandal, dating back to around 300 BCE, resembles Roman sandals of that era. Again, in Norway, hunters found an iron sword high up on a mountain, more than 5,250 feet above sea level. There's no nearby burial site, and it's puzzling why someone would have a sword in such a remote location. Archaeologists speculate that the owner might have become lost. Then, in 2011, unusual objects resembling giant slingshots began to emerge as the ice melted. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this particular object was crafted around 400 BCE. It measures over 3 feet long and has knife cuts. Those puzzled archaeologists until one team member recognized them as tang, or pliers, used to secure loads on sleds when transporting hay or leaving for animal food. People in the area used hay sleds with pliers until the 1950s, when tractors became more common. Now, let's get back in time to thousands of years ago. We can easily do that by looking at this woolly mammoth. This creature looks a bit like a cherished but slightly worn-out toy. This ancient giant, whose heyday was 39,000 years ago, is the best preserved mammoth ever found. Even its signature shaggy hair is surprisingly well preserved, having been trapped in glacial ice until its recent discovery in Siberia. This remarkable animal is stepping into the limelight in Yokohama, Japan. Scientists are running tests that might bring this extinct species back to life. When they stumbled upon this female mammoth, they uncovered a hidden treasure, a sample of her blood preserved beneath the ice. So they believe this ancient blood could hold the key to resurrecting the mammoth. They also found well-preserved muscle tissue. She was between 50 and 60 years old when she met her icy fate. The discovery of mammoth blood has reignited debates about the ethics of bringing back extinct creatures, like in Jurassic Park. Their ambitious plan is to implant an egg into a living elephant for a 22-month pregnancy, hoping that at least one living mammoth cell might survive. Hop on, we're going to the French Alps. We are at a spot not far from where an Air India plane tragically crashed 46 years ago. We're accompanied by a diligent mountain rescuer and his neighbor. They went to this area after a bunch of tourists had noticed a strange-looking thingy on a glacier. It was a bag. The Indian embassy in Paris got wind of it, and it was all set on getting that bag. What makes it kinda cool is that it had diplomatic mail and Ministry of External Affairs written on it. The Air India flight was on its way from Mumbai to New York when it took a nosedive in January 1966. It took 117 people on board down with it. Guess what else was inside the bag besides the soaked diplomatic mail? It had a stack of old Indian newspapers. So, alongside those, they also found bits of the plane's cabin, a lone shoe, and a bunch of cables. Totally unexpected treasures on that mountain. During the summer of 2013, scientists stumbled upon a message left behind by a geologist named Walker, who had placed it there 44 years before. That message sort of served as the man's last testament. He passed away just a month after hiding the bottle in the rocks on the island. The content of the message was quite astounding. In 1959, Walker had measured the distance from those very stones to the glacier's edge, and it clocked in at a mere 167 feet. By 2013, that distance had ballooned to 400 feet. Researchers are convinced that this stark contrast between the two measurements underscores the consequences of ongoing global warming. Imagine the melting ice in Norway's mountains as a time machine revealing a treasure trove. Nearly 800 Viking artifacts tucked away for over 1,000 years have been unearthed. They give us a peek into the bustling trade networks of the Viking era and the critical role of the mountain passes in this ancient commerce. Among the finds are leather shoes, cozy woolen mittens, stylish tunics, feathered arrowheads, horseshoes, walking sticks, and kitchen gadgets from the Viking chef's toolkit. There are even Viking pack horse souvenirs. These artifacts provide us with insights into ancient travel habits and the peak times when those paths were bustling with activity, and give us a glimpse into the lives of adventurers.
Hold on to your hat, my friend. These internet users came across some hauntingly spooky stuff IRL, but I'm guessing you'll want to stay away even from these pics. Picture this. You're boarded and ready for takeoff in a huge Boeing jet. It's your first time on an airplane. You were scared, but people kept telling you it was safe. You've convinced yourself it would be all right when the pilot comes on the speaker with some disturbing news. Good morning, folks. Our flight has been canceled for safety reasons. It appears that a cloud of bees is hovering close to one of our wings, and we'll have to remove them before takeoff. I have to say, this is a first. I have to say, I'd like to get off, please. Now let's say you always take the long way to work. It's one of your favorite bits of the day because you can enjoy a peaceful walk surrounded by beautiful scenery. You're passing across a muddy pond area, like you normally do, when something strange catches your attention. What on earth could that be, you ask yourself? Apparently, it's a colony of reddish worms, just casually existing. I think my stomach just turned a little. Have you ever backpacked anywhere around the world? If you have, then you were probably worried about one thing and one thing only – bed bugs. Getting into a new hostel, the typical routine is to check your mattresses. The worst thing is to sleep in a bed filled with these little creatures and then have to wash all your clothing the next morning just so you won't pass this around to other establishments. If you ask me, this appears like a bed bug and sci-fi beetle had a fight in this person's bed and this is what was left. Well, jokes aside, it reminds me of the remains of some bug. Which bug? I have no idea. I'd tell this woman and all hostel owners to use some kind of mattress protector, just so that backpackers all over the world can stop sweating so much over these tiny creatures. Now, you've just won an all-inclusive trip to Hawaii. Ah, the white sandy beaches and the amazing sunsets. You're happy to leave your fancy hotel and take long walks on the beach. But wait, what's that? It appears like a lobster shed its tail and the remains came floating all the way to the sand. But according to experts, that's not a lobster. They wouldn't shed just their tail. That appears to be some kind of isopod. Isopods are crustaceans that look somewhere between shrimps and lobsters. That's why you thought it was a lobster, huh? They also look like giant roly-polies. Do you know what these are? Someone had a roly-poly infestation in their house, and it does not look like something you want to have to deal with. Imagine spending your days hunting these tiny creatures all over your furniture. No thanks. Now, when I was a kid, I loved playing pranks on people. But I would be the first one to be completely spooked when someone played a prank on me. I'm guessing the person who ran into this thing on their office wall wasn't too pleasant. But hey, maybe it's karma, right? What goes around comes straight back around. Imagine it's a sunny Sunday morning and you went on a hike with your best friends. You hiked up a pretty steep mountain covered in knee-high vegetation. You know what that means, right? Bugs. The great thing about bugs is that they never cease to amaze you. There are endless varieties of extremely rare and never-before-seen bizarre bugs. The first one you met was this thing right here. It fell off your dog's back. It resembles a jackfruit seed mated with a spider, and this is what came out of that union. Hopefully, it's just a bizarre insect and not threatening in any way. Your sock also picked up a few buddies along the way. Look at the number of ticks your sock protected you from. The next time you go on a hike like this one, you should take some kind of bug repellent with you, but a strong and effective one. You know, like an ultrasonic repellent that disorients ticks, so they'll never find the way to your juicy socks. And speaking of bugs, quick test here to find out if you're the type of person that loves or loathes the great outdoors. Imagine it's early in the morning and you just woke up in a remote house found deep inside a forest. You step outside, and the first thing you see on the porch is a snake casually passing by. Would you take a selfie with it, or close the doors and hide back in your covers as fast as humanly possible? Or maybe you just woke up, opened the door to the outside world, and got to be the sole witness of a bug molting. Would you shed a happy tear or be disgusted by it? I mean, look at it. It seems like a baby Pokemon. So cute. Ah, it's summertime. My favorite time of the year. You can enjoy the pool until late in the evening and meet your friends and family for a Sunday outdoor picnic. But there's one thing that really annoys me: bees. Eating outdoors usually means having to share some of your juice or yummy food with a bunch of bees. If only some genius person invented something that kept bees away from our food, like some ultrasonic frequency we could blast on our speakers, or some kind of decoy nest that was more interesting to the bees than my picnic food. Oh, or maybe this. I guess this will do. Simple but effective. I'll try it out and tell you if it worked out for me. The best thing after a hard day's work is coming home. Except when you're welcomed by this thing. I mean, how did this spider even get here if you live in a city apartment miles away from any real greenery? That's a mystery I'll never solve. You take your 5-year-old to play in the local park. She's in a digging phase, so as soon as she gets there, she starts digging up the whole place like a Jack Russell Terrier. You watch her have buckets of fun when suddenly you spot a shiny blue thing crawling out of the hole. What on earth? You think to yourself. You grab it with a stick and it reveals itself. A centipede. You know, the things that burn you with their venomous legs. Best to put it back in the hole and move to another park. If you could choose any movie or TV series to live inside of, which one would you choose? Most likely some cozy rom-com, right? I'm guessing no one, or almost no one here, would choose to live life as a Last of Us character, right? But it seems to me like this person had a Joel moment, if you ask me. This thing crawling out of the forest floor is a fungus that imitates a human hand. I mean, does life imitate art, or is it really just one giant messy blob? Remember when we talked about backpackers? Well, this person had a similar problem as they do. Apparently, they took a bunch of clothes to wash and dry, and this is what the dryer filter looked like afterward. There are maybe 100 little buddies in there. Ooh. Out of curiosity, do you know why they're called bed bugs if they hide on the floor and not in your bed? They crawl up to someone's bed at nighttime because they can sense carbon dioxide emissions, also known as they can sense your breath. If this isn't a horror movie plot, I'm not sure what is. Where do I even start with this one? I'd say this piece was actually a prop from a Tim Burton movie that somehow got lost and ended up in your vegetable basket. It's supposed to be a yam, but it's shaped like Grinch's hand if he were white instead of green. Oh my. In my wildest dreams, I couldn't make this stuff up.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length. and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
They look like they come from your worst nightmares. There's no evidence they exist, but all the scary stories about them still sometimes sound so real, passed down from generation to generation. Which one is your favorite? The first creature that probably comes to your mind is Bigfoot, a giant creature that reminds you of an ape and allegedly leaves extremely large footprints and other traces that make people in the area of the Pacific Northwest wonder if it's really there. It's so popular, other similar beasts got their own legends too. Like the Mogollon Monster, something people also call the Arizona Bigfoot. Reported along the Mogollon Rim, this mysterious creature is 7 feet tall and has big red eyes. Stories say its body is covered with long reddish-brown or black hair, besides its face, chest, feet, and hands. It mimics coyotes, birds, and other wildlife, emitting strange whistle sounds at the same time. The creature tends to explore campsites when it gets dark. It builds nests out of twigs, pine needles, and leaves. And if you're in that area and someone is throwing stones from locations you can't see, yep, Mogollon Monster. This creature is omnivorous, which means it eats both plants and animals. And it prefers to wander at night, lurking for innocent prey lost in the woods. Urayuli, a 10-foot mythical creature people say hides in the southwestern woodland parts of Alaska. It's a hulking giant beast known for its extremely long limbs. Legends say their lanky arms are so long they reach their ankles. The creature is covered in a thick coat of hair. The only thing you can see on its face, not covered in the hair, is the creature's eerily luminescent eyes. The legend says Urayuli use their glowing eyes to hypnotize their prey. But not us, since stories say they prefer to catch deer. And they're known to be kind towards humans. And some claim the Urayuli are actually just a type of Bigfoot. Wendigo. This terrifying creature is said to be hiding across the northern forests of Canada and the United States, always looking if there's some lost wanderer. The story says the Wendigo used to be a lost hunter. The freezing winters transformed him into a fierce 15-foot tall beast with desiccated skin tightly pulled over its large, pointy bones. Stories about this creature showed up in the 20th century, and people say the beast still roams around the forest in long, cold winters, constantly looking for lost people he could grab from the darkness. Lake Worth Monster. This scary creature that's part man, part goat is also called the Island Monster. This 7-foot-tall monster is so strong, it could hurl car tires like they were just plastic toys. In a worst nightmare scenario, it could appear in the darkness, sailing from the treetops and fiercely landing with full force on the hood of passing cars. That's how the first people who reported its existence described it. Lake Worth is located west of Dallas and east of Fort Worth. There's a landmass in the middle of this mystical lake known as Greer Island. The legend says that's where this scary monster, also known as Fort Worth's answer to Bigfoot, roams. And that's where some skeptics and thrill seekers still go, wandering around and trying to discover if the legend is true. Lurking in the darkness with its scary red eyes, meet the Mothman, a humanoid beast reportedly seen in the 1960s in Point Pleasant in West Virginia. On one cold night in November of 1966, two young couples reported to the police that they saw a big gray creature with glowing red eyes. It looked like a flying man with wings around 10 feet wide. During the next couple of days, more and more people said they saw the same thing. Later, a wildlife biologist from West Virginia University told reporters that these descriptions fit the sandhill crane. It's a big American crane almost as tall as a human being. It has a 7-foot wingspan and circles of red around its eyes. The gigantic bird may have got out of its migration route and started these stories. Or did it really? Fresno night crawlers. They're not that tall, considering they're monsters, about 5 feet. The upper part of their body is pretty small, so most of their height is their legs. These creatures have allegedly made 2 appearances so far. Once, people saw them in Fresno, California. In contrast, the other time was in Yosemite National Park in California. Both times they were in videos of poor quality, so it wasn't easy to find details of their upper body. But the creature is considered thin and white with no arms. At least, we can't see them. It also has pretty short and stilt-like feet. Have you heard of the Slide Rock Bolter? It's said to be hiding somewhere in the mountains of Colorado. To be precise, in Lizard Head Mountain, only a stone's throw southwest from Telluride. It's some sort of leviathan that lives on the land. This mountain whale carefully observes its surroundings with beady eyes while chilling atop Lizard Head. It hangs from the peak while its split, clawed tail faces its body downward. If anything steps into its territory, the beast lifts its malign fluke immediately and bolts down the mountainside. With its jaw full of razor-sharp teeth wide open, it gobbles whatever or whoever is in front of it, including miners, lost tourists, and loggers. It sweeps through trees and destroys all natural life that's been in its path for more than 100 years. Or at least that's what the legend says. Wow, that's the scariest one for me so far. Altamaha. Somewhere in southeastern Georgia, close to the mouth of the Altamaha River, there's a hissing sea monster hiding. It's one of the biggest rivers in Georgia that empties into the Atlantic Ocean, and the entire area that surrounds the river is full of small islands, canals, dikes, ponds, acres of marshes, and old rice fields. Perfect for such a monster to hide, don't you think? The story says this unusual cryptid has a sturgeon-like body, including a bony ridge on its top. Due to its front flippers, the creature swims like a dolphin. His snout reminds me of a crocodile. His teeth are large and sharp, whereas his eyes are big and protruding. The beast is green or gray with a white-yellowish underbelly and is up to 30 feet long. There's no physical evidence the Altamaha really lives there, but the legends date back centuries when people started talking about an enormous snake-like beast that hissed and bellowed. Loch Ness Monster, or how many like to call it, Nessie. This myth dates back from old times, all the way to a group of people that lived in ancient Scotland known as the Picts. The legend started to grow in the 1930s. Back then, a road near Loch Ness was finished, offering a nice view of the lake without bigger obstacles. And in April of 1933, a couple noticed there was a large animal. They compared it to a prehistoric monster or dragon. Most people imagine it as a plesiosaur, which is basically a marine dinosaur. The beast quickly crossed the couple's car's path and then disappeared below the water's surface. Later that year, some researchers even big footprints. They believed they were from a pretty soft-footed solid creature around 20 feet long. Later, some determined the tracks were the same as the ones that a hippopotamus leaves. Plus, scientists said the lake wasn't that nutrient-rich for such a large predator. There are not enough animals to support such a beast at the top of the food chain. But the legend about a giant mythological creature has moved on and still makes people across the world wonder if there's really something hiding deep down in the dark, murky waters of Loch Ness.
Komodo dragons are the world's heaviest lizards you can see today, mostly seen in Indonesia. But that might not be where these giant scary creatures really came from. Scientists found their fossils in eastern Australia, and what's interesting is they were about 4 million years old. They're dominant in the food chain and can take down really big animals like deer, water buffalo, and wild boar. Komodo dragons will basically eat almost anything that comes their way. Since Komodo dragons are not so picky when it comes to their meal, people believed for a long time that their bites can be fatal because of the number of bacteria in their mouths. In reality, they're one of the few venomous lizards on Earth. Gharial really looks like a creature you'd see walking by dinosaurs and fighting for its spot in the food chain in prehistoric times. These fellas have been on our planet for tens of millions of years. Look at its long, narrow mouth and sharp teeth. Its snout might look odd at first, but it's perfect to catch the food they like the most: fish. They're also good parents, even the most dedicated ones in the world of reptiles. Females lay their eggs in multiple nests close together and keep them safe from the river and potential predators. When young sense danger, they will rush to the nearest gharial and even clamber onto their heads to hide from what's chasing them. Sturgeon looks like that simple, primitive, ancient fish for a reason. It's been on our planet for at least 250 million years. Its fossils are all over the northern hemisphere. You can mostly find them in big freshwater rivers and lakes, but some species tend to travel to the oceans and return to lakes and rivers only when they need to breed. On average, they live 50 to 60 years and grow up to 18 feet. Many of them leap out of the water and make a loud splash. You can hear on the surface even if you're a half a mile away. No one knows why. It could be the way they communicate with other sturgeons. Solenodon. It's a venomous mammal with a chunky body and short legs. It's been living in the Caribbean area for more than 70 million years. They can climb, but still spend most of their time on the ground. There, they move in an irregular path with a waddling gait, but when necessary, they can run pretty fast for short distances. They have a special way of communication: chirps, twitters, clicks, squeaks, and squeals. They have specific skin glands which give them a goat-like odor. At night, they like to search for invertebrates. They probe soil and leaf litter soil using their long snout. It's flexible, similar to our shoulder joint. This way, they're more mobile and they can explore narrow crevices, while using their sharp claws to help them to tear apart rotten tree trunks. Oh yeah, snails, lizards, frogs, land crabs, bird eggs. They're welcome on the menu as well. The sea lamprey is an ancient parasitic fish that lives in the western and northern Atlantic Ocean. Because of their body shape, people sometimes inaccurately describe them as lamprey eel. This species has remained mostly the same for over 340 million years and have gone through at least 4 big extinction events. They have a pretty well-developed sense of smell. That's why they use odors to communicate with each other and navigate their way through. Check out their teeth. They have at least 12 rows of them arranged in circles. A single nostril lies at the top of their heads. They're like sea vampires since they suck other fish's blood. Some lamprey species are non-carnivorous, and what's crazy, they don't eat at all. They just live off the energy they stored back in times when they were young and were eating. You must admit, echidna is a real cutie. A bit bizarre and a walking contradiction though. First, they look like a mix between an anteater, a badger, and a porcupine. They are mammals, but a primitive type that lays eggs. The only such type of living mammal we usually call monotremes is a platypus. Also, echidnas are also classified as short or long-beaked, even though they don't have beaks at all, just fleshy noses that can be rather short or long. They're covered in hollow spines, and these are actually modified hairs. Fur between the spines is what gives them insulation. They look weird, but it obviously works for them since they've been unchanged for tens of millions of years. Alligator gar is a curious animal that looks more like it's mythical than real. It's not a mixture of a koi carp and a crocodile, and it's not related to alligators. But check its sharp teeth and crocodilian head. It's easy to see where the name comes from. They're more than 150 million years old, and this is the biggest fish species in North America that spends nearly all of its time in fresh water. They can tolerate brackish water and even stop by for salt waters, but swamps, bayous, lakes, and the sluggish pools of big rivers are still their favorites. They're not dangerous for humans. Some call the shoebill stork the most terrifying bird in the world. One thing they could certainly win is definitely a staring contest. They can stand literally motionless for hours, holding their bills down against their neck, and their golden eyes certainly tell you they're up to no good. They're known for their strong bite. These birds may be more related to pelicans than storks, since their vocal organs are similar. Babirusas, sometimes even called prehistoric pigs. In the Malay language, their name means pig deer. Check out their barrel-shaped stocky bodies, somehow perfectly balanced on delicate legs that look like deer's legs. Males have large tusks that grow upwards through their snouts and at some point curve back towards the head. There are cave drawings that depict them, which are over 35,000 years old. Unlike regular pigs, Babirusas rarely dig or root into the ground. They're missing what's called a rostral bone in their nose. That's the bone that keeps the snout stable and rigid. Without it, these animals can't pierce the hard dirt. Chinese giant salamander is a funny-looking creature that's been roaming our planet for 170 million years already. We're talking about the biggest amphibian in the world. It can grow to be bigger than some people, up to 6 feet long, with a weight of 110 pounds. Their tail may make up more than half the body length. It's hard to notice them because this specific color helps the animal to blend in with the floor of the rivers where they usually live. Tuatara might look like a regular iguana at first, but it's literally a living fossil since it's been around for about 250 million years. Even its body shows its ancient history. There's a primitive third eye on the top of their head. It's hard to see it though, especially because some tuataras have scales over it. Scientists think it's some sort of an ancient light sensor. The reptiles used it to set their both seasonal and daily biological functions. Tuataras can hear sounds too, even though they don't have external ears like modern-day reptiles. Fish hear sounds in the water in a similar way. Jellyfish have been present on our planet for over 500 million years. Yep, that means they're 250 million years older than the first dinosaurs. But their bodies are soft and almost completely water, so their fossils are really rare. The oldest one was discovered in Utah and was 505 million years old. One species of jellyfish is basically immortal. When it faces some kind of environmental stress that would mean an end of life for other jellyfish, these can just revert back to be a tiny blob of tissue. And then they develop, starting their life all over again.
Check this out. Each zebra has its own unique pattern of stripes, just as people have their own unique fingerprints. Is it just a myth, or is it the truth? What do you think? It's true. Stripes on each zebra form a unique pattern, so it's impossible to find two zebras that are exactly the same. The stylish black and white pattern serves as an optical illusion to confuse and scare away their key enemies, predators and annoying insects such as tsetse flies or horseflies. Zebras are probably aware of how fabulous they are because they take time to groom one another. So, if you ever see two zebras standing close to one another, they aren't biting each other, it's a friendly beauty routine. Unlike humans, zebras can't scratch themselves on their own that easily, so they're just pulling loose hairs off each other. I do that. Although zebras live in herds, they usually create smaller family groups, a male, several females, and their offspring. And each member of that group is unique when it comes to their stripe patterns. All bats are blind. Would you buy it? Nah, it's just a myth. Being blind as a bat is a figure of speech, and it comes from the assumption that bats cannot see properly. In ancient times, also known as before the 21st century, people used to think that bats were blind, judging these charismatic creatures by their weird flight patterns. Many bats do use echolocation to navigate, but still, all of them can see. Here comes the next one. Lobsters are monogamous and stay together for a lifetime. True or false? What do you say? Well, sorry to spoil the romance, but it's just a myth made popular by a famous TV show. In real life, lobsters aren't monogamous at all. Dominant male lobsters mate with several females, and then, one by one, they vanish, only to reappear on a restaurant table with melted butter. No worries, the animal kingdom still has some hopeless romantics that remain faithful to their mates throughout their lives. Swans, gray wolves, beavers, bald eagles, gibbons, to name a few. You can get warts from handling frogs or toads. What do you think about this rumor? It's an old myth, probably related to the fact that both toads and frogs have bumps on their skin. Visually, these bumps remind of warts, but they're just glands that never secrete any substances that could cause humans to get warts. There are no amphibians that can give you warts, but shaking hands with another human who has them can. Moving on, turtles live inside their shells, and they can go outdoors anytime. Is it true or false? It's a myth. Those fairy tale and cartoon turtles pop out of their shells whenever they like. But in fact, saying that turtles live inside their shells is like saying that people live inside their own skin. A shell isn't just a separate empty space that serves as a costume. Although turtles can tuck their limbs inside for protection, it's actually an integral part of the turtle's anatomy. Take a look at the actual structure of its skeleton. The shell is fused to the bones of the skeleton, and the turtle can't live without it. The same goes for tortoises. One major key difference between turtles and tortoises is that tortoises spend most of their time on land, while turtles are designed to hang out in the water. That's why turtles have thinner and more water-dynamic shells, and tortoises' shells are more rounded and domed. Next, koalas' fingerprints are indistinguishable from humans. Does this sound realistic? Although it definitely sounds like it's made up, in fact, it's true. If you compare a human fingerprint to a koala's, you'd hardly be able to tell the difference even under a microscope. When scientists made this discovery, they warned the police because these fluffy little cuties are really capable of confusing forensics at crime scenes. The smart guys suppose that the koala's fingertip features have recently improved independently in their evolutionary history. Koalas' relatives like kangaroos and wombats don't have the same features. Koalas probably developed these complicated fingerprints because they help them grip onto leaves and branches more easily. Koalas are known as super fussy eaters. In fact, they prefer eucalyptus leaves of a particular age. Their sensitive fingers may have evolved as a tool to spot out the right leaves by their texture. Koalas aren't the only mammals with human-like fingerprints, by the way. Finger patterns of chimps and gorillas are also pretty complex. Ready to move on to the next rumor? Ostriches put their heads in the sand to hide from predators. Myth or true? What do you say? Nah, that's just a myth. Ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand when threatened. In fact, these guys don't bury their heads whatsoever. This myth has spread, thanks to that famous idiom, to hide one's head in the sand. In real life, ostriches have to dig holes in the sand for their eggs because they're flightless birds. To make sure they're evenly heated, ostriches put their heads in there to rotate the eggs from time to time. But ostriches still have some escaping mentality. When they face some threat, they can flop to the sand and stay perfectly still, pretending they aren't alive. Goldfish can't remember anything for longer than a second. Can it really be that bad? If you often say you have a goldfish memory as an excuse for forgetting something important, I have some bad news for you. Multiple studies have proven that goldfish can remember things for several months, if not more. Scientists from an Israeli university held the cutest experiment. For 1 month, they turned on classical music while feeding the fish. They believe that this practice would teach the fish to associate the melody with food. In 5 months, after the end of that training period, the fish still got excited and started looking for food every time they heard the music piece that had played earlier. Ah, Mozart! Hey, where's my food? It's not clear exactly where this myth came from or why it's so popular, but some people suggest that goldfish owners started it as they felt guilty about keeping their pets in tiny bowls. Cats and dogs are colorblind. Any thoughts on this one? Well, that's not true. Cats and dogs have much better color vision than we thought. This myth is probably just an exaggeration of the fact that each animal perceives colors differently than people. Studies reveal that both cats and dogs can see in green and blue. They also have more light-sensing cells in their eyes, also known as rods, than humans do. It means that cats and dogs can see way better in low light spaces. Dogs' eyes have fewer cones, those color-sensing cells. That's why scientists believe that dogs' approximate color vision is only about 1/7 as vibrant as humans. Sharks can only breathe and stay alive when they swim. Does this one sound real to you? According to a popular misbelief, sharks can breathe only while moving because swimming helps them push water over their gills. Although many kinds of sharks are designed this way, many others, like bottom-dwelling nurse sharks, don't need swimming to pump oxygen-rich water over their gills. Meanwhile, all sharks do lack swim bladders, so if they stop swimming, they'll probably sink to the bottom. But luckily, a shark's body can't be compressed. That's why rapid descents or ascents are safe for them. Sea otters hold hands so they don't drift apart while sleeping. Can you believe that? Yep, it's true. You can keep awing at it, but in fact, this way of sleeping has a practical purpose for them. Scientists suggest that sea otters develop this cute habit to stay close with their mating partners. If you hold your otter girlfriend's hand tightly all night, it will reduce the risk of her mating with another male while you're sleeping. Shameless. Also, holding hands helps otters to protect themselves from predators because they stay away from the land altogether. Now, if a human touches a bird nestling, its mother will abandon it. Myth or truth? What do you think? Luckily, it's just a myth. In fact, parent birds don't recognize their younglings by smell. So, feel free to put the cuties back in the nest. And always hang on to your otter girlfriend so you won't get eaten. Good advice.
Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric megalodon, These sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastasaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastasaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastasaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family. meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. Styxosauruses were about 35 feet in length, but over 16 feet of that consisted just of their long snake-like neck. They had a comparatively small body and weighed approximately 4 tons. Their mouths were full of razor-sharp cone-shaped teeth that they used to catch fish. They didn't need to chew their prey, thanks to the 200 small stones called gastroliths in their bellies that probably aided in digestion. At the same time, some scientists believe that the Styxosaurus used these stones to sink to the ocean bottom in search of particular types of fish. Looks kind of like Nessie to me.
Now, one of the most common animal myths is that mice love cheese. It popped out a long time ago, probably as early as when people started storing food. Since mice are regular visitors to human homes, they were constantly looking for food they could eat. People used to store grains in glass jars. They also kept their meat hanging up high. But they'd lay the cheese on the shelf, which was an easy target for all the unwelcome pantry visitors like mice. So they ate it because they couldn't reach anything better. But a mouse will definitely more likely go after chocolate or some other sweet thing than the cheese. Who can blame them? Now, flamingos don't really stand in the water on one leg so they wouldn't get cold. This is just a simple way for them to spare the effort. It's exhausting for us humans to stand on one leg, but for them, this is the most stable position possible considering their peculiar anatomy. This pose doesn't require any muscular work. Now I'm jealous. One of the most widespread and oldest myths out there is that ostriches hide their heads in the ground every time they're scared. A long time ago, researchers thought ostriches weren't very smart because they bury their heads in the ground without being aware the rest of their large bodies are still out there, where everyone can see them. In fact, ostriches do it when they want to swallow sand and pebbles to boost their digestion or just turn over the eggs they lay in their nests. And even then, they technically don't bury their head, but put it near the ground. Otherwise, with its head in the sand, the poor thing wouldn't be able to breathe. No reason to think of an ostrich as a frightened bird. Like some other animals, it will flee if it senses there's a danger coming. And in some situations, it'll fight back and defend itself. And that's one angry bird. What do you think is the largest thing a blue whale can swallow? Well, we're talking about the biggest animal ever known to have lived on our planet. It can grow up to 100 feet long with a weight of 200 tons. Its heart is as big as a car, and its tongue can weigh as much as an average elephant. It's easy to imagine a blue whale swallowing cars, people, and even small ships, perhaps. But it's all wrong. The largest thing it can actually swallow is a grapefruit. Its throat can take the size of a small salad plate. Whales feed on small fish, plankton, and marine crustaceans, so they don't need a bigger throat. But we wouldn't be able to survive the juices inside a blue whale's stomach anyway. It would finish us within 15 seconds, similar to how long we'd last in space without a spacesuit. So don't try this. Camels don't store water in their humps. We're talking about animals with extraordinary resistance to some pretty extreme conditions. They can survive even when drinking water only every 8 to 10 days, but not because they have a secret stash on their back. It's because, when they have a chance to drink, they will swallow 50 gallons of water at one sitting. They mostly use it to replenish 30% of their total body weight, an amount they can lose by dehydration. So, they lose a lot of water but quickly regain it. Their humps are where they deposit fat, but it's not for producing water. The oxygen camels would need to inhale would cause them to lose too much water because it would evaporate through their lungs. That's why they use fat as a nutritional source for energy. This helps them survive in arid regions and times of scarcity. Now, it's a myth that anteaters vacuum ants using their noses. They don't go around looking for ants and hoovering them through their long snouts. Anteaters have very long tongues. Giant anteaters have tongues that go up to 2 feet long. It's the shape of a strand of spaghetti and covered in spiny hooks and sticky saliva that traps ants, up to 160 times in a minute, which means they eat up to 20,000 insects in a single day. That's a lot of bugs. They open anthills using their claws and then do the rest of the work with the tongue. They don't have teeth, so they only swallow all the insects they catch. Movies might have given you a false sense of security when it comes to dinos. Nope, standing very, very still couldn't save you from a raging T-Rex coming after you. It's a myth. The Dino King had bad vision. These beasts may have seen better than modern-day raptors. They had excellent depth perception, something present in today's animals such as eagles and hawks. Even if, by some miracle, the Dino King can't see you or thinks you're just a small tree or some other object because you're standing so still, they had a pretty good sense of smell. So, the better option would be to run because the T-Rex is not as fast as scientists used to think, up to 33 miles per hour. Considering their anatomy, they could move at a speed of 12 miles per hour. Anything faster than that would have caused serious bone damage. But this didn't stop them from ruling the animal world because there were plenty of dinosaurs way slower than them, so they didn't have to worry about food. Another misconception states that owls can spin their heads, neither more nor less than 360 degrees. Their head spinning does have its limit, 270 degrees in one direction. Since they can turn 270 degrees to the left and right, owls have a 540-degree range of motion. Don't worry, if you touch a butterfly's wings, the animal won't lose its ability to fly. It will survive, despite the common myth that says the opposite. Butterfly wings have scales. When you touch them, some scales might shed off, but it's not a bad thing, because they shed off naturally too. Because of sheddable scales, they can escape more easily if they get stuck and trapped in spider webs. Now, the next myth has inspired many movies, books, and TV series scenarios, but no, wolves don't howl at the moon. They typically howl at night, true, but because that's the period of time when they're most active. They'll also look up while howling since this helps the sound travel. That way, other wolves will hear them from around 6 to 7 miles away. And that's why they howl in the first place, to communicate with each other. They make specific sounds for a certain situation. For example, to help a wolf that lost its pack find its way home. The moon just happened to accidentally be there while wolves were communicating. Okay, giraffes only need 30 minutes of sleep a day. That's another myth. They sleep about 4.5 hours daily. It's not that unusual for animal species that are most active during daylight. Studies also showed giraffes usually lay down to sleep for less than 11 minutes at a time. Many people believe moles are blind. These small burrowing mammals actually can see. It's just their vision is really poor and only adapted to recognize light. They're also colorblind. When they're searching for food and navigating the dark underground, these creatures mostly rely on their touch and sense of smell. Now, their sense of touch is sharp, which is why moles can feel nearby vibrations of activity. This helps them avoid danger or find their next meal more easily, like millipedes, worms, centipedes, and other invertebrates. Yum! They're really fast at digging and can dig a couple of inches per minute. In the winter, animals hibernate, not because it's too cold for them to be outside, but because there isn't enough food during that period. When an animal is in hibernation, its heart rate, body temperature, breathing, and other metabolic activities slow down significantly. That's how they conserve energy. Chipmunks, bats, turtles, snakes, they all hibernate during the winter, which saves them energy for other seasons when they get more active and are capable of getting more food. I'd say bears too, but they're not the true hibernators. If you try waking one up during the winter when you believe the animal is sleeping, you might end up having a bad time. Now, they do slow down, which means they sleep for extended periods of time. They're still not asleep for the entire winter season, and you can easily wake them during their sleep, so let's not. Now, don't believe myths. Earwigs won't lay eggs in your ears. Yup, despite their name, they're not that interested in your ears. Well, at least there's no evidence they'd want to go there. They prefer to spend their time in dark, moist places, such as under tree bark or in soil. So, your ears are off the hook. Now, cartoons might show it differently, but mice are not actually that into cheese. This myth occurred during the Middle Ages. At that time, many foods rats and mice like way more than cheese were out of their reach. For example, people would store grains in jars or keep meat hanging. But cheese usually matured hidden in cupboards or shelves. Rats and mice could easily get to these spots. So, people would usually find them there, eating not what they liked the best, but what was within their reach. Now, dogs don't see the world in black and white. They do distinguish colors, but not as well as we do. We have 3 types of cones in our eyes, while dogs only have 2 of those. Cones are special photoreceptors that help us perceive colors. Dogs can see certain colors, such as blue and yellow, better than the rest, and they can hardly see red and green. Dogs' mouths are by no means cleaner than humans. They have over 600 kinds of bacteria in their mouths, and their saliva doesn't have any healing properties. They don't sweat through their tongues either. When dogs pant, their tongues hang out, so people think that's how they sweat. But in reality, most sweat glands are on their paw pads and all over their body. They pant to evaporate extra moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. Panting is also another way to cool down. Opossums have some pretty cool abilities. They have a good memory and immunity to most snakes' venom. They're also very social. But, contrary to popular belief, they don't sleep while hanging by their tails. These animals have strong tails, true, and it makes them excellent climbers, but they don't have the necessary muscle structure to hold such a position for a long time. Now, bats are not blind. They are nocturnal animals and might not see well during the day, but their vision is 3 times better than ours during the night. They do lack color receptors, but people can't see colors in low light either. Bats also use echolocation, which is locating things by the sound waves they reflect to detect small insects in the air. Chameleons have the ability to change the colors on their body, but they don't do it just to blend in with their surroundings. They do it to communicate with others of their kind or to regulate the body temperature, not to camouflage themselves. When these animals are in their natural state, they mostly resemble branches or leaves. Now, it sure looks like it, but rhino horns aren't made of bone. They're made of keratin, the same material you can find in your fingernails and hair. A horn is not attached to the rhino's skull. Instead, it's like a very, very compacted mass of hair. It grows throughout the rhino's lifetime, just like our nails and hair. The horn also looks like something a rhino can use for its defense, but that's not always the case. Some animals use their teeth to protect themselves against their enemies. No wonder the teeth on their lower jaws are so sharp. If you press the snooze button in the morning, you're not actually going to get those extra 10 minutes of sleep. It sure feels good to postpone getting up and staying in the warm bed at that moment, but the snooze button makes you feel more tired instead of providing you with extra rest. You see, your brain believes it's going to fall asleep again, which is why it will get harder and harder for you to get up when the alarm rings for the second or fifth time. In the long run, the snooze button may mess with your ability to get high-quality deep sleep. Now, when you mention desserts, I always think of chocolate. Oh wait, I did a boo-boo. Let's start that again. When you mention deserts, most people picture endless sandy areas, hot and dry. But you should define deserts not by temperatures, but by a lack of precipitation. Most of the well-known deserts across the world are indeed hot, but some are extremely cold. For example, there are polar deserts in northern Greenland. Can we talk about chocolate some more? No? Okay. Well, here's another one. Lightning won't strike the same place twice. Not really. In fact, lightning can and often does strike the same spot repeatedly. So, if you get caught in a thunderstorm, better look around. Instead of hiding in the place already struck by lightning, try to find some shelter and avoid touching anything metal. You won't see an owl turning its head a full 360 degrees, even though it may look like the bird is doing it. Instead of eyeballs, owls have eye tubes. These tubes go far back into their skulls. In other words, owls have their eyes fixed in place. That's why they have to turn their heads when they want to see what's going on around them. They can't make a full circle with their necks, but they come very close, 270 degrees, which is 3/4 of a full rotation. Not bad. Cats don't only purr when they feel content and happy. They can also do it if they're sick, scared, or even angry. Despite all stereotypes, these felines don't gracefully land on their feet every time they fall. True, they do have the so-called righting reflex. A cat has a vestibular apparatus inside its inner ear, which is the natural balancing system the animal uses to orient itself. With the help of this system, a cat can quickly figure out how to rotate its head so that the body can follow. In the end, the animal lands on its feet, but this reflex doesn't work every time. Elephants don't use their trunks as a drinking straw. When an elephant is thirsty, it pulls some water into its trunk, then brings it to its mouth and funnels the water inside. In other words, when these animals drink water, it doesn't go through their trunks, the same as people don't drink through their noses. Well, most people. Elephants have huge ears, but they can also listen with their feet. When they want to examine some faraway noise, elephants freeze and lean forward so that most of their weight is on their front legs. Sometimes they even lift one of their front feet. They rely on seismic communication, which means they detect sound waves that travel not through the air, but through the ground. There are many myths about your brain, like its right part is creative and the left one is logical. But your brain doesn't work this way. It's not strictly divided into parts that exclusively cover only one area, like logic or creativity or something else. Actions you take and things you go through are the results of the activity of your entire brain. The cerebral cortex is the part of your brain that consists of two halves, but both of them are connected to many other areas that make up the rest of the brain. So, no neurons in the left part of your brain will turn you into a computer whiz, and those in the right half won't turn you into a poet. Now, you may think your brain shuts off when you fall asleep, but it doesn't. It has slow activity rates when you're in a deep sleep and becomes more active when you're dreaming. During this stage, your brain's activity is almost the same as it is when you're fully awake. Now, not to freak you out, but you don't see with your eyes, hear with your ears, or feel with your skin. For example, you're washing your face, but your skin itself doesn't have sensors for wetness. Your brain uses a combination of multiple sources of information, including temperature, touch, or your earlier experience. That's why you feel that your face is wet. Your brain creates that sensation after analyzing all kinds of different information. Your brain doesn't actually react to things going on around you. It may seem like that. You see a cute little puppy and it makes you smile. Your friend makes some silly joke and you blush. But neurons in your brain don't just wait until something happens to react to that. Instead, they're trying to guess what might happen next all the time. Your brain starts analyzing your actions and the experiences you've gone through even before it gets data from your ears, nose, eyes, and other organs. Your brain is always working to predict what the world will be like in the next moment and what you will do in this world. So even though you're not actually reacting to the world, this process of prediction is happening so effortlessly and quickly that you feel like you do. Moving on, Jupiter doesn't technically orbit the Sun. When a smaller and less massive space object circles a bigger one, it doesn't travel in a perfect circle. Instead, both of these objects follow their respective elliptical orbits around a barycenter, which is their common center of gravity. Earth is way smaller than the Sun. That's why the barycenter it shares with our star is really close to the center of the Sun. That's why we can't see that our planet's orbit is a little bit off-kilter. But Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. Its weight is more than twice as great as that of the rest of the planets, asteroids, moons, and comets combined. That's why the barycenter of Jupiter and the Sun is a little further from the star's center, around 30,000 miles above the surface. Okay, can we go back to the chocolate? Well, maybe next time. Looking for something slimy? Well, many people tend to believe that snails are just slugs with shells. But even though they look so similar, they're completely different species. Slugs don't need any protective shells, as all their internal organs are, well, internal, inside their slimy bodies. They can squish themselves and get into hard-to-reach places, which is why slugs can often be found in the most unlikely spaces, like under tree bark, or inside tiny crevices, or at the library pretending to study for exams. Snails, on the other hand, are tightly connected with their shells and can't survive without one. Unlike hermit crabs, which replace their shells as they grow, snails are born with a shell on their back. Baby snails look adorable with those fragile translucent bubbles that calcify and become bigger and tougher with age. Cute? Well, you be the judge. Many of the snail's internal organs are inside the shell too, meaning that if it gets crushed or damaged, well, the animal would probably not survive. Still, a snail can repair small scratches and cracks in the shell with the help of proteins and calcium secreted by its mantle. Now, turtles are very close to snails in this regard, by the way, because contrary to common myth, they can't leave their shell at a whim either. A turtle's shell is an integral part of its body, and despite the reptile being able to hide its head and paws inside to protect itself from predators, its skeleton is fused with the hard shell, and just like any other animal skeleton, it grows with the turtle itself. Now, koalas do only eat eucalyptus leaves, but there are over 600 different kinds of those, and koalas only munch on 30, or just 5% of what's available on the menu. So it has to be a very specific eucalyptus tree to make a good meal for a picky koala. These adorable creatures also have something in common with domestic cats. They sleep for 18 to 20 hours a day. Polar bears aren't at all white. Their skin is black under the fur. They need the white color to disguise themselves while on the hunt. The color black absorbs the sun better than any other, while white fur doesn't stop sunlight. Rays pass right through it. In a sense, a polar bear has transparent fur. There's a myth that dogs and cats see the world in black and white. In reality, they just can't distinguish some colors. Nobody knows how exactly dogs see. Some think they only distinguish two colors. Could be blue and yellow for all we know. but they can see shades of other colors better than people, and cats have wonderful night vision. They need about 7 times less light than a human to see in the dark. Now, giraffes were thought to be mute, but recently it's been found that they make low-frequency sounds at night to communicate with each other. During the day, they don't say a word and warn each other of danger in a very unusual way, by moving their well-developed eyebrows. It's likely that at night it's difficult to see the eyebrows, so they start talking for real. While we're on the topic of giraffes, these animals sleep much more than 30 minutes a day, but probably not as much as you do. Their sleeping pattern is quite typical. After researchers monitored a herd of giraffes, they found out they slept at night and took short naps in the afternoon. In total, each giraffe had around 5 hours of sleep every day. Oh, and by the way, a herd of these guys is actually known as a tower of giraffes. Makes sense with the long necks. Seagulls can drink seawater. There are salt-secreting glands near their eyes. These glands purify seawater very quickly, and the salty residue comes out through the nostrils. Yep, you guessed it, salty snot. The Adelie penguins are real romantics. They only have one partner for life. The male must give a smooth stone to the female to create a family. You could say that's kind of an engagement ring. Like humans, though, a female penguin may refuse and not accept the ring. Speaking of animal love, foxes are romantic too. Male foxes are good fathers and husbands. They're devoted to their loved ones for life. They look after the females and even pick fleas from their fur. Aww. Male foxes improve their whole houses and take an active part in their baby's upbringing. Dolphins can sleep with one eye closed and the other one open. Half of the brain dreams and rests, and the second half closely monitors the environment for signs of danger. The perfect brain for sleeping during boring classes and meetings. Hey, I didn't say that. Besides, dolphins manually control their breathing. They can simply drown if their whole brain is sleeping. Sea otters are the cutest sleepers among all animals. In the summer, because of the heat, sea otters spend all the time in water. They swim on their backs and sleep in that position. The babies are sleeping on their mother's stomach, and 2 adults hold each other by the paws so that they're not carried apart by water currents. Ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand when threatened. In fact, these guys don't bury their heads at all. This myth has spread thanks to that famous idiom to hide one's head in the sand. In real life, ostriches have to dig holes in the sand for their eggs because they're flightless birds. To make sure they're evenly heated, ostriches put their heads in there to rotate the eggs from time to time. But ostriches still have some escaping mentality. When they face some threat, they can flop to the sand and stay perfectly still, pretending they aren't alive. Now, according to a popular misbelief, sharks can breathe only while moving because swimming helps them push water over their gills. Although many kinds of sharks are designed this way, many others, like bottom-dwelling nurse sharks, don't need swimming to pump oxygen-rich water over their gills. Meanwhile, all sharks do lack swim bladders, so if they stop swimming, they'll probably sink to the bottom. But luckily, a shark's body can't be compressed. That's why rapid descents or ascents are safe for them. Scientists from Japan played audio recordings for cats to prove they're truly dismissive. In those recordings, the owners of the cats called them by their names. Cats' pupils dilated, the animals moved their tails, legs, or ears. Cats heard people, but rarely responded. It's all about evolution. Cats came to people because they were attracted by mice that ate grains. They lived close to people, but were never tame. And yet, we keep feeding them. Birds are actually the only surviving dinosaurs. They evolved from theropods, the dinosaurs that ran on 2 legs. Yep, T-Rex is a distant relative of chickens, ostriches, and even hummingbirds. In reality, flamingos are white. The bird turns pink due to beta-carotene. This pigment is found in the algae and the shrimp that it feeds on. You can change your color too. If you eat a lot of carrots, your skin will turn slightly orange. This will happen because of the high beta-carotene content in the vegetable. Sailors from all over the world talked about the giant squid they met on their voyages. For many years, scientists considered monsters with long tentacles to be a myth. But in 2004, the first photo of a giant squid was taken. They actually exist. Scientists have registered an animal that has grown to 43 feet. Mosquitoes actually bite some people more than others. The most delicious humans are those with type O blood. Also, these insects have really good eyesight. They're attracted by green, black, and red colors. So, check the color of your clothes before you go camping. You can actually put a shark in a trance for 15 minutes. To do this, you need to stroke the nose of a dangerous animal with your hand. This sort of hypnosis is called tonic immobility that happens thanks to the receptors in the shark's nose. When stroked, the receptors send a lot of signals and the shark's brain is unable to process them all. Now, what it doesn't say here is exactly how you get close enough to a shark to rub its nose. I'd say that's important information, don't you think? Elephants aren't afraid of mice per se, but these massive animals have bad vision. They also move fairly slowly. That's why they can get startled by a bird or a small creature, like a mouse darting past them. Just the element of surprise, nothing more. The chameleon can change its color, but this creature doesn't do it to camouflage itself. The color change helps the animal regulate its temperature and communicate with peers. Now, when most dogs pant, their tongues hang out of their mouths. That's why many people think that's how they sweat. In reality, dog sweat glands are located on their paw pads. Plus, there are other sweat glands all over their bodies. Dogs pant to evaporate moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. This also helps to cool them down. You might leave wasps alone, but don't be so sure they'll do the same. Bees do respect human boundaries, and if you don't bother them, they won't hurt you. But wasps are so bad-tempered, they can sting you even if you're just walking by their nest. Well, phooey on them. Ooh, great news! Eating ice cream won't make your cold worse. Frozen dairy can help soothe a sore throat and give you the calories you need when you don't feel like cooking or eating anything more substantial. Giraffes sleep for way more longer than 30 minutes a day. Their night and afternoon naps add up to around 4.5 hours a day. You can't have a truly photographic memory, even if you can recall visual material in more detail than others. You'll never compare to a film or camera sensor when it comes to precision. A bigger brain doesn't automatically make you smarter. Elephants and whales have brains way larger than humans. We might not have an impressive brain-to-body mass ratio, but 86 billion neurons help humans stay the smartest species on the planet. Light isn't the fastest thing in the world, it's gossip. No, actually, nothing can compare to it in speed in a vacuum, but it slows down when it's going through water or glass. Particles like electrons, neutrons, or neutrinos win in those conditions. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter isn't tumbling with dangerous rocks constantly colliding. If you ever found yourself there, you'd see how empty and calm it is. The asteroids are so far apart from each other, the chances of collision are super small. A spaceship radar would detect it and help avoid any risks. You don't have to wait for the spring equinox to make an egg stand on its head. It doesn't need equal gravity or anything and can perfectly do it on any day of the year. Oranges aren't always orange. The green skin variety is just as sweet and perfectly ripe. This skin color protects them from the sun and is also a sign that there's plenty of chlorophyll in the fruit. That's why green oranges mostly grow in warmer climates and are sometimes painted orange to look more regular to buyers across the world. More good news. You really always can squeeze in some dessert, no matter how much salad, soup, or meat you've eaten before. You get bored of the savory tastes, but when you see and smell ice cream, cakes, cookies, and chocolate, let me take a minute here. Your brain gets excited and overrides fullness signals for pleasure. Plus, your stomach is a flexible organ, and sugar helps it relax and physically make room for dessert. You have way more than 5 senses. In addition to sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, there is your ability to sense heat and cold, detect vibrations along air or water, tell where some of your body parts are in relation to others, feel pain, thirst, hunger, time, and many other things. When you call someone using your cell phone, the signal doesn't go through a satellite. Your gadget is always looking for wireless radio signal and transmitting data to and from land-based cellular towers. If you want to call someone, the nearest tower connects you to another cell through a huge network of tower-to-tower communications. Brown sugar isn't any healthier than white sugar. It's mostly white sugar with some extra residual sticky syrup in it. This syrup has some vitamins and minerals like potassium and magnesium, but even that doesn't make it diet food. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be there for just 20 years. The idea of it was to show off France's industrial power during the World's Fair. But because Eiffel added a radio antenna and wireless telegraph transmitter to it, they decided to keep it. It also has a secret apartment on top and used to double as a meteorology lab. It's also a great landmark for a rendezvous. Green and black tea really come from the same bush. The leaves get their different tastes and looks after they've been harvested. Green tea is withered and heated through steaming. Black tea is crushed or curled and then allowed to oxidize and darken. Honey can spoil if you leave it uncovered in a human environment. Keep the lid on and make sure no water gets inside, and it'll be edible for a really long time. Its antibacterial powers won't let any organism settle in there. If you leave wasps alone, no, they won't necessarily do the same. Bees will respect your boundaries if you don't try to hurt them. Yellow jackets are so bad-tempered, they can sting even if you're just walking by their nest without knowing it and are perfectly still. So there. Camels don't store water in their humps. They use it as a reservoir for fat to let them survive for days in the desert without stopping for food. They get water in huge amounts on the way to keep them hydrated. Excess water stays in their bloodstream. Owls can't turn their heads full circle. 270 degrees is as far as they can go without seriously hurting themselves. It's possible thanks to their unique neck bone structure. Bats aren't blind. When it's dark outside, they hunt using echolocation, using echoes bouncing off objects to navigate. There are many kinds of bats, and some of them can see 3 times better than humans. They have receptors that enable these bat species to see ultraviolet light. Fortune cookies aren't originally from China. According to the most popular version of the origin story, they were invented by a Japanese immigrant in San Francisco in the early 1900s. Einstein wasn't bad at math in school. He mastered calculus at age 15 and was always at the top of his class. This myth comes from the story of Einstein failing an entrance exam to a college in Zurich. He did great at the math portion, but failed botany, zoology, and language sections. Elephants are really afraid of mice. Like most mammals, they have brains programmed to jump back when they see a critter. No matter how huge they are, elephants will be startled by little things moving fast by their feet. A mouse can't do them any harm, though. Even if it tried climbing up the trunk, the elephant can easily get it off. The sun isn't yellow. It's a bunch of colors that mix and make it appear white. We see it as yellow or orange because the atmosphere of the Earth scatters colors like blue, green, and violet. This is also why we see the sky as blue and the sun looks warmer at sunrise and sunset. Not all comets have tails. When they're next to a star, they look like small frozen chunks of ice and rock. As they approach a star, the ice is scattered away thanks to the solar wind and looks like a tail. Sometimes these tails are too faint to see. Comets can also get a tail of dust and gas particles. An ostrich doesn't hide its head in the sand when in danger. They are the fastest two-legged animals and can outrun almost any intruder or kick them with their powerful legs. They sometimes bend down to eat some sand for better digestion. They also do it to check their eggs in the ground when they start a family. You can sleep outside after washing your hair and it won't make you sick. Even sleeping outside in sub-zero temperatures at that time can just make you chilly and make your hair freeze. Viruses cause colds, and they don't care about your hair condition. The Earth doesn't get closer to the Sun in the summer. In reality, it's farthest from the Sun in July and closest to it in January. It's warmer in the summer because the axis of our planet is tilted, letting its northern part catch more sunlight for half of the year and the southern part for the other half. So, in summer, the Sun is above the horizon for up to 17 hours a day and just for around 6 hours during winter. You can't see millions of stars even on the clearest night and far from sources of light. The highest number you can see if you have really good eyesight is around 3,000 of them. They are the ones that are close enough and bright enough. Some other luminous objects you can spot are planets, distant galaxies, and artificial satellites. The Moon really doesn't have a dark side. It's tidally locked with Earth, so we always see just one side of it. The Sun, the Moon, and our Earth are all constantly moving. So there are times when the side of the Moon visible to us is lit, and then its other side. It only seems dark to us. No worries, you don't eat 8 spiders every night in your sleep. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so a spider can't make it inside. Even if you sleep with your mouth wide open, the powerful vibrations you produce while breathing and a warm stream of air coming out of your mouth will scare away any little spider. A penny dropped from the Empire State Building won't damage anyone on the ground. It's lightweight and can't speed up enough to be that devastating. The coin's speed does grow with every passing second during the fall, but the air resistance increases too. The worst it can do to a passerby is sting a little. Mammoths were really still roaming the planet at the time the pyramids in Giza were built. Most mammoths had been wiped out around 10,000 years ago, but a small population of 500 to 1,000 woolly mammoths lived in the Arctic until as recently as 1650 BCE. The Great Pyramid of Giza had existed for 1,000 years by the time the last woolly mammoth disappeared. Your tongue doesn't have bitter, sweet, sour, salty, or umami sections for tasting. Not even daddy. Each of the 8,000 taste buds that you have on the tongue, the roof of the mouth, and even in the throat can detect all the tastes the same way. You don't have to worry about putting certain foods in certain places in your mouth to get a better taste. Fingerprints aren't 100% unique. Related people can have somewhat similar patterns. Plus, with over 7 billion people on the planet right now, and not all of the fingerprints recorded, we can't be sure anyway. Your brain has more nerve connections than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It's around 200 billion stars versus 100 billion nerve cells multiplied by 40,000 nerve connections. It's impossible to breathe and swallow at the same time. There's a food pipe and a windpipe at the back of your mouth. When you swallow, the air could take the food through the wrong pipe down to your lungs. The consequences would be dramatic. To prevent it from happening, there's a flap guarding the windpipe. When food or drink is going through, breathing is temporarily paused. You can't hum while holding your nose. You're exhaling during humming, and when both your mouth and your nose are closed, the air can't escape. Sushi restaurants don't serve real wasabi. It would be incredibly expensive, so they replace it with dyed horseradish with mustard. The real thing is from the same family of plants. It's served fresh, grated off the stalk, and tastes sweeter. Your chances of getting it are about 0.5%, and if you do, you'll know it from a super high price. Carrots weren't originally orange. Before the 16th to 17th century, almost all of them were purple, with some rare yellow and white exceptions. Orange carrots have been cultivated by Dutch farmers. They believe they'd be easier to grow. It's true that things appear weightless in outer space, but there's gravity everywhere. The further you get from a heavy object, like Earth, the weaker it gets. Still, gravity affects every single spot in the universe that has mass. Strawberries aren't berries. Neither are raspberries or blackberries. Bananas, eggplants, grapes, tomatoes, and oranges are berries. They have 3 distinct fleshy layers, 2 or more seeds, and develop from one flower. You do have enough iron in your body to produce a metal nail that's 3 inches long. Try it sometime. Wait, don't. Lightning can strike the same spot twice, 3 times, or more than 100 times. Even during the same thunderstorm, nothing can stop a lightning bolt from striking the same place it had struck a few seconds earlier or centuries ago. Lightning prefers tall and isolated objects. The Empire State Building, for example, is hit about 25 times a year. The largest living organism isn't the blue whale or the African elephant. It's honey fungus across the Blue Mountains in Oregon. It's as long as 6.5 Burj Khalifas end to end, and that's the world's tallest building. It's still growing, and it's edible. Turkeys can blush, just like humans. The skin on their heads and necks can turn red or blue when they're excited, angry, or sick. The flap of skin over their necks is called a snood and can go bright red from excitement. During mating season, male turkeys' wattles also turn scarlet to show their interest to females. The Sahara isn't the biggest desert in the world. The Antarctic desert is almost twice as large. The second place belongs to the Arctic desert, and the Sahara is third. The main feature of a desert isn't the excessive heat or dunes. It's the lack of precipitation. The ice fields and rocky mountains of the Antarctic almost never get a drop of rain. Sitting too close to a TV won't make you go blind or give you serious vision problems. Hey, tell that to my mother. It can temporarily strain your eyes, but long-term problems are super rare. Reading in the dark won't make you go blind either. Flies live longer than 24 hours. An average housefly lives for around 1 month. Fruit flies have a lifespan of 40 to 50 days. Over this time, one female fly can have up to 500 offspring. That's why leaving flies in a locked room and waiting won't solve your insect problem. Bears don't sleep for months during hibernation. The processes in their bodies slow down and they don't eat or drink. But they can still perfectly react to any unexpected things going on around them, so keep your distance from their dens. Cracking your knuckles isn't bad for your health. The sound you hear while doing it is a special organic fluid bursting into the gaps between your bones. It happens under the pressure you put on your joints and is harmless. Goldfish don't forget everything that happens to them after 3 seconds. Experiments have proven they can do pretty well with their tiny brains storing information for several months. They can also hide from their foes and find food. You can't fry an egg on a sidewalk, no matter how high the temperature is outside. An egg needs 158 degrees to cook though, and a sidewalk only gets to a maximum of 145 degrees. Bananas don't grow on trees. They're an herb related to the ginger family and look somewhat like aloe vera or other stem-like succulents. Chameleons don't change their color to blend in with the environment. They do it to show their mood and to communicate. They turn black when they're nervous or upset, and when they're happy, you'll see the bright green or blue. They use lighter colors to attract mates. Toilet flushes don't spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. The Earth's rotation affects things like the Gulf Stream and hurricanes, but it has no control over toilets. The direction varies from model to model and depends on the water pressure. Mustard seed isn't the smallest in the world. The record holder in this category is the orchid seed from the tropical rainforest. Some of them are so small you won't see them with an unaided eye. They pop out in the air like dust particles and land on rainforest trees to spread further. Carrots are full of vitamin A, but even that isn't enough to help you see in complete darkness. It can only help you maintain healthy eyesight. Everything in the solar system is always in motion. The moon is moving away from the Earth with each year, and our planet gets further and further from the sun. You're also constantly on the move, even when you're standing perfectly still. White chocolate isn't really chocolate. It's made from sugar, milk products, vanilla, cocoa butter, and lecithin, but doesn't have chocolate solids in it. Cocoa butter is derived from cacao beans, which makes white chocolate a cousin of dark and milk chocolate, but not the closest relative or the same thing. Coffee won't stunt your growth. How tall you'll grow is genetic. A healthy diet can contribute to that too. Set your coffee consumption limit at 2 cups a day and you'll be fine. Wow, 2 cups? You don't need to wash chicken before you cook it. Doing it can spread germs onto your hands, work surfaces, clothing, and cooking supplies through splashes. Walnuts aren't really nuts. Neither are almonds, cashews, Brazil nuts, pecans, macadamia nuts, pistachios, or pine nuts. They're all formally seeds of drupes. They can't be called nuts, as they aren't fruits that have a single edible seed with an inedible outer shell. Diamonds aren't actually that rare. They're ordinary rocks, and extracting them isn't as complicated as it used to be 150 years ago. Marketing and advertising campaigns and artificially raised prices help them to become something considered luxury. Bulls don't get angry when you show them something red. They are red-green colorblind and can only see yellow, green, blue, and violet colors. Movement is what makes them angry and self-protective. So, try to look like a banana. Swimming right after a meal won't give you cramps. Your body needs some extra blood to digest food, but swimming won't revert it from the muscles in your arms and legs, messing up their work. Adding salt to water won't make it boil faster. The temperature of salt water will get higher faster than that of regular water, but the boiling point will also be higher, and salt adds some extra mass to it, so things won't speed up. Kangaroos can't walk backwards. They have muscular legs, big feet, and tails, and can move forward fast but can't go in the opposite direction because of this body construction. They're on the Australian coat of arms along with emus that can't move backward either, symbolizing that the country is always striving forward. Milk won't make your bones indestructible. It does have calcium and vitamin D in it, but no magical bone-healing powers. It is good with cookies. That is not a myth. Hi. Do chameleons only change color for camouflage? No. They can actually change colors to reflect their mood. So, males turn a bright color to show their dominance, and they become darker when they get aggressive. Chameleons also change color to adapt to different temperatures. A cold chameleon will turn dark to absorb more heat, while a smoking hot chameleon will turn itself pale to reflect the sun's rays. By the way, do comedians change color for camouflage? Only if their jokes aren't getting any laughs. Okay, I made that up. Now, there's a myth that if you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it'll pretty much destroy whatever's underneath. But when put to the test, researchers found that it just isn't true. On its way down, a coin can't gather enough velocity to cause permanent damage to anything, mostly because of wind resistance and the penny spinning around and stuff. Anyway, just hang on to your change. Now, some people believe that toilet flushes spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. Some things are affected by the Earth's rotation, like the Gulf Stream or hurricanes, but toilet flushes are way too small. Flushes can spin in either direction, whether they're in the northern or southern hemispheres. Trust me, I know. The biggest determinant of flush direction is the design of the toilet bowl and the water pressure. There's a popular saying that lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Lightning often strikes near the same place a lot more than that. Lightning generally chooses the tallest, pointiest spot as its target. Researchers have found that the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning almost 100 times a year, and quite a few people have been zapped more than once, like a lot more. So, if you're tall and pointy, be careful out there. So there's a common belief that bats are blind. But bats have better vision than humans at night, although humans can see more clearly during the day. Maybe this myth came about because bats rely a lot on their hearing to get about. Or maybe it's because bats see the world in black and white. Now, do goldfish really have short memories? Well, most people put it at 7 seconds. In reality, goldfish can remember things for as long as 7 months. Without a good memory, goldfish who live in nature would never find food. Did anyone ever tell you that a mother bird will reject its offspring if they've been touched by a human? That would be nuts, because most birds don't have a developed sense of smell. They'd never be able to identify the scent of a person. The vulture is an exception to this rule. It has an amazing nose, but then who'd want to touch a vulture anyway? Ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, except they don't. This myth probably came into being because an ostrich's head is disproportionately small in comparison to its body. So, from a distance, it looks as if the ostrich has its head stuffed in the sand. But if it really did that, it would pass out from not being able to breathe. Another myth is that opossums hang on branches with their tail. The opossum does use its tail to help it climb trees, but its tail can't support its weight. Even a hulked-out calisthenics master opossum could only hang there for a few seconds max. Legend has it that a penguin will fall backward when looking up at an aircraft. Cutest myth ever. Penguins can maintain their balance no matter what, even while looking up at the sky. But low-flying airplanes may cause penguins to flee their nests in panic. Do dogs really sweat by salivating? No, they sweat through their foot pads. But salivating and panting does help them regulate their body temperature. Cat owners may think that a cat only purrs when it's happy. But cats also purr when they're hungry, distressed, or recovering from an injury. Researchers think that purring may be a self-healing trick. Somehow, it keeps their bones and muscles working better. Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There's a myth that owls can turn their heads full circle, but that would cause them significant damage. But still, they can turn their heads comfortably more than halfway around because of their unique neck bone structure. If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve ending supply. If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate. No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Ever wondered whether the story about chewing gum taking 7 years to digest is true? Nah, it isn't. Chewing gum isn't too different from any other food. It takes around the same time to digest, but it's not exactly nutrient-heavy. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to… never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. One of life's no-nos is to jump into the pool right after eating. But hitting the gym after a big meal can leave you feeling just as uncomfortable as doing a few laps. Also, if you're worried about getting a cramp in the pool, those can happen anytime, not just after a meal. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no, but researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. Did ancient Vikings really wear those awesome horned helmets? There's no real evidence to back up this claim. This myth probably came from books and music, looking to spice up their heroes a bit. If you want to see a Viking with a helmet, go to a Minnesota Vikings game. That's about as close as you're going to get. Some people believe Einstein flunked math in school. Einstein himself debunked this theory by saying he mastered calculus at age 15. But Einstein did fail to enter the school of his choice because he flunked languages on his first try. But math? He passed with flying colors. Alright, check this out. Water boils faster when you add a bit of salt. Myth. It doesn't make any difference, and even if it does, it may take longer for the water to boil. But it might make your pasta taste better. Just saying. Bats are blind. Not true. The myth probably comes from the fact that they're nocturnal creatures and have extraordinary hearing abilities. They chase mostly when it's dark and rely on a thing called echolocation, but it doesn't mean they're blind. Their eyes aren't useless, they're just adjusted to low light conditions. A blue whale is so big, its tongue can weigh as much as a big elephant. True. Yep, these fellas are huge. You lose more heat through your head. Nah. The real reason why people believe it is because when it's cold, our head is the only part we're most likely to keep uncovered. If we went outside wearing just a t-shirt, we'd lose heat through our arms, not to mention legs, hips, and other parts. So, wear a hat, guys. Tongue Map says we have different parts for different tastes. Not really. There are individual taste buds that sense certain flavors more than they do with others, but it doesn't mean one area can taste sweet better than the other. Studies showed all mouth areas have taste buds sensitive to all tastes. Hey, check out this tongue map for the blue whale. Looks like she's partial to plankton. Dinosaurs were giant. Well, that's false. Movies show them as huge, scaly lizards, but nope. First off, there were many smaller dinosaur species, and some of them were as small as a turkey or a pigeon. Plus, some dinos, like T-Rex, were even covered with feathers, especially at the early stages of their lives. Oxygen is colorless. Partially true. In gas form, it has no color, but in solid or liquid form, it has a sky blue shade. Chameleons change color because they want to match their surroundings. Myth. That would probably be a very tiring thing to do. In reality, some other things, like mood, temperature, or the amount of light they get, affect their color. When chameleons relax and stretch cells, crystals that are inside of them are affected by the light. These animals use crystals to communicate with each other. So, for example, darker shades show that they're not in such a good mood. It's more like they kind of feel aggressive. So I think I'll back off here. Neanderthals aren't our ancestors either, even though they lived with modern humans at the same time at one point, but mostly in different areas of our planet. So they're not just a stage of human development, but a different lineage. They were also pretty creative. They used fire, made tools, ate medicinal plants, cleaned their teeth, and so many more things similar to our species. Neanderthals probably went extinct because of harsh climate changes. Turkeys can blush. That one is true. They're just like us when it comes to this. When angry, excited, or even feeling bad, the skin on their necks and heads turns red, just like my big brother. Black holes are not really holes, as the name may imply. They are very dense objects with an extremely strong gravitational pull. Flamingos are such cool animals. True. They bend their legs at the knee. Myth. They actually bend them at the ankles, since the knees are closer to the body as well as covered in feathers. Supermarket apples are fresh. Maybe yes, but maybe not. They can be up to 1 year old, since they're often picked between August and November. After that, they're covered in wax and dried in hot air. Finally, they're sent into cold storage, and after 6 to 12 months, we see them on the supermarket shelves. Bottled water has an expiration date? True. But that doesn't mean the water is the thing that expires. The bottle does. The plastic starts to leak into the water, and some unwanted chemicals appear. The tea bag wasn't actually planned. True. In the early 20th century, Thomas Sullivan filled small silken bags with samples of tea leaves and sent them to his customers. The idea was to open them and toss tea leaves in the hot water. Many customers thought they were supposed to put those bags into the teapot without opening them. The tea bag went through some improvements, got string and a paper tag at the end, and the new unplanned invention was ready. Lightning will never strike the same spot twice. Not true. The Empire State Building was once struck 8 times in only 24 minutes. There was a terrible storm, and nothing could or can generally keep lightning away from the place that got hit. If a struck place has features that attracted the lightning in the first place, like terrain shape, standing water, or height, it may attract it once again. You have so much DNA in your body that you can actually stretch it from the sun to Pluto and back. True. And not just once, 17 times. Of course, you're not going to look the same after you do that. Crocodiles are one of the oldest species in the world. Yup. They have been around for 200 million years already. Like my neighbors down the street. Opossums sleep while hanging by their tails. You can see that in cartoons and some photos, but in general, they don't. Their tails are really strong, so these animals can grip branches and hold their weight, but only for short periods. Adults are really too heavy to stay in this position for too long, so they wouldn't get much rest. Goldfish have a 3-second-long memory. Nope. Those colorful fish are actually really smart. One study showed goldfish could tell the difference between 2 classical songs. They're not quick learners, true, but after over 100 sessions, they did it, which wouldn't be possible if their memory could really last only for 3 seconds. One type of salamander, you can read that on your own, go ahead, can extend its tongue over half of its body length in only 7 milliseconds. True. That's 50 times faster than a blink of an eye. Ooh, gotta be fast to catch that tongue map. People can multitask. Not true. Checking emails, talking on the phone, cooking, it seems like doing several things at the same time saves time, But research shows multitasking is not quite possible. Our brain is wired to do one thing at a time. So when we think we're multitasking, it's actually switching tasks, which can take even longer rather than saving us some time, as well as whittling down our attention spans. Earth is not the only planet with water. NASA discovered Jupiter had an ocean with twice as much water as we have on our planet. It's right under a layer of ice. Even Mars has some liquid water flowing. Also, the Earth is round, or is it? Technically, it has flattened poles, together with a bulge at the equator. That way, it has an irregular shape of an ellipsoid. Zombies are not made up. True. Okay, humans can't turn into ones as we see in movies, but the animal kingdom has its zombies. For instance, there's a type of fungus that takes over ants, spreading specific chemicals in their brains. That makes an ant leave its family looking for the place where this fungus wants to live. The world's biggest waterfall is under the ocean. Oh, very true. It's in the Nordic seas. The cold seawater is denser than the warm waterfall. The drop is almost 2 miles long. The smallest wasp in the world is not bigger than an amoeba. True. This wasp has the same body parts as other bugs, like eyes, wings, brain, legs, and more, but it's just 0.008 inches long, which, in most cases, makes it smaller than one-celled organisms we also know as amoebas. Snow can only be white. Not true. And I'm not talking about the snow near fire hydrants. For example, there are some mountains with pink snow, like the Sierra Nevada in California. Its color is caused by a certain type of algae living there. Aurora Borealis has a sister. True. It's called Aurora Australis, and you can see it in the southern hemisphere. The best time to see it is in winter. Over 99% of atoms is empty space. True. If we collected all the people in the world together and removed all the empty space between the atoms out of them, the population of Earth would fit into the size of an average orange. I think we should try that. Then I could finally get a seat on the bus. Dolphins communicate and call each other by names. True. They use specific vocal whistles to identify each other. So long, and thanks for all the fish. The toilet flushes in different directions when on different hemispheres. Nope. The direction is the same whether the toilet is in Australia or France. Really? A snail can have a pretty extended nap. True. Some snails can sleep for around 3 years in a row. Sharks smell just one tiny drop of blood from miles away. Not quite. Sure, their brain region in charge of smelling odors is enlarged, but the ocean is really big. Plus, it takes time for odor molecules to spread in liquid. On a pretty good day with favorable currents, a shark may smell the prey from a distance of a couple of football fields away, but not miles. Finally, penguins propose to their significant other. True. They're monogamous, and after choosing a mate, the male gives the female a pebble to show his affection. Ah. Now, as much as we love epic space battles with blasters cutting through the black void and causing cheerful booms, that's not exactly what happens when something explodes in the big black. Space is basically vacuum, meaning it has no oxygen, and oxygen is an essential part of any process of burning we have here on Earth. You might argue that stars can burn and explode into supernova, but that's not exactly true either. Stars don't rely on oxygen, so they're not burning. There are constant thermonuclear reactions going on inside them. So a spaceship can only explode like that if it has a nuclear power plant installed in it. If it doesn't, then the only special effect you get is a brief flash that disappears in the blink of an eye. Liquid oxygen, which is often on board spaceships, is very quick to burn out in the vacuum of outer space. As for the boom, oxygen plays a crucial role here too. Sound only travels thanks to molecules of air bumping into each other. Since there's no air in space, the whole scene would be pretty much absolutely silent. And that's not a bad thing either. Just imagine how deafening would the sun be if the sound could travel in space. Despite what many sci-fi directors want us to believe, there's no dark side to the moon. Our satellite is tidally locked with Earth, meaning it's always turned to us with one side, while the other always looks away. The sun is much farther from us than the moon, and we're both turning round and round, warming and lighting this side and that in turn. It means that once in every short while, The moon is lit by the sun from either side. It's just that we can't see it from where we are. While things appear weightless in outer space, there's actual gravity all over the place. It becomes weaker the further you get from a heavy object, like our planet, but it's still there. In fact, there's not a single place in the universe that isn't affected by gravity of this or that cosmic object. Everything that has mass has gravity as well. Yes, even you and me. But space objects are so massive that they tug smaller things towards them. That's why the planets of the solar system orbit around the Sun, and our whole Milky Way galaxy orbits around its own center. Scientists believe there's a supermassive black hole there, about 4 million times heavier than the Sun, which keeps all the stars and systems from flying apart. Our movie hero leaves the orbit of Mars on their trusty spaceship and heads on towards Jupiter. Their face is grim and determined, even though they know what threat awaits them ahead – the asteroid belt. They pitch and yaw, dodging the asteroid flying at enormous speeds toward the spacecraft, but one of them still hits it. No, just a scratch, thankfully. Finally, our hero leaves the danger zone and wipes the sweat from the brow with a shaking hand. Sounds familiar, but couldn't be further from the truth. Asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter are so few and far between that if you ever travel through it, you might not even encounter one the whole way. There are about 1.5 million sizable space rocks flying there, give or take 500,000. But let's not forget, space is a vast place. The distance between two asteroids of any significant size would be millions of miles. So a space chase with two ships weaving between floating rocks would be quite boring in there. Space is often depicted as a black, cold, and desolate place, especially when a movie astronaut leaves the safety of their spaceship. Everything about this description is okay, except for the cold part. It's only true if you find yourself in some really far corner of our galaxy that has no nearby stars. But if you're, for example, in the Earth's orbit and directly facing the Sun, the temperature in the cosmic vacuum could reach a scorching 250 degrees. That's why spacesuits are white. This color reflects light better than any other. Still, the temperature at your back, which isn't exposed to the sun's rays, can be really freezing indeed. Heat doesn't spread equally through space, so if you're not turned towards a heat source, you get very, very cold. Speaking about the sun, it somehow always appears yellow in movies. The fact is, the color we see from Earth is an optical illusion created by our planet's atmosphere, just as the blue sky during the day. The light from the sun spreads in the atmosphere and gets distorted, making colorful spectacles at dawn and dusk. In the vacuum of space, there's nothing to reflect the light, so the sun appears as it really is, white. That ball of glowing gas is that hot. There's a bright flash in the sky, followed by a tail of smoke, and a red-hot space rock crashes into the ground, leaving a huge, charred crater after impact. Well, although the smoky tail and the crater are partly true, meteorites don't really have a chance to become that hot while falling. Meteorite is an asteroid that somehow entered the Earth's atmosphere and survived the friction enough to fall on the surface. This happens pretty often. We just don't usually see those rocks because they're normally quite small and fall into uninhabited areas. But even if one falls within a city, the crater would appear because of the sheer speed of the meteorite, not its heat. They do get much hotter because of friction, yet not so much as to burn everything on the ground on impact. As much as we want to believe in instant communication between spaceships and planets, it's not possible, at least not yet. Modern communication systems rely on radio signals that have a pretty slow speed compared to the vast expanses of space. It would take years for such a signal to travel even 1 light year, let alone hundreds and thousands. If you want to send a message to a galaxy far, far away, be prepared to wait a couple of millennia and then a couple more to receive a reply. On that note, space is not as crowded and full of events as is often shown on the silver screen. It's mostly a rather lonely place where planets, stars, and other objects are separated by billions of miles of nothingness. Even if you have a spaceship that can travel at the speed of light, most of the time you'll only see black void full of stars and planets far away. The distances are enormous out there, even between the closest objects. For a better understanding, the Moon, which you can see so well on a clear night, is about 239,000 miles away. It's like traveling around the Earth almost 10 times in a row. Warp drives that can distort space-time and get you to a distant corner of an alien galaxy in the blink of an eye, that's a staple of any space opera. Spaceships capable of such a feat are always shown as instantly accelerating from zero to faster than light. According to the law of physics, people on board should, well, at least be pushed into their seats hard. More strictly speaking, no one would be able to survive such an acceleration because it's too many G's on a fragile human body. Until we find a way to reduce the effects of overload, we can't even start thinking of space warps. Water isn't the rarest and most precious resource in the universe. In fact, there's a humongous space cloud several million light-years away from us that consists entirely of water. Its reserves would be enough to fill all our oceans 140 trillion times over. And many planets, some even in our solar system, seem to have liquid water on them. The most precious resource in space is life, and that requires a lot more stuff to appear than just liquid water. Astronauts are often shown working out on the ISS and sci-fi space stations, and that much is true, they do need physical activity. But the reason isn't that they need strong bodies to work in space. The gravity out there is much weaker, and astronauts don't use their muscles as much as on Earth. So when they come back to the surface, gravity hits them as a sledgehammer, and their bodies feel squishy. To alleviate those effects, they train every day. Although they say we can see millions of stars on a clear starry night, that number is much more modest, about 3,000. All the rest are other objects that are also luminous and mistaken for stars, planets, distant galaxies, and even artificial satellites. They're simply being illuminated by real stars, just like the Moon, and become seen. But because they're that far away, we can't tell if they're stars or not. Still, you gotta admit, it's all still pretty cool.
A human year is not the same as a dog year. You might have thought that dogs age 7 times faster than we do, but it's not that simple. A dog that's been around for 1 year is, in fact, already 31. It will most likely even have its own little puppies running around. But here's where it gets tricky. 2 human years don't necessarily mean that your dog is 62 either. Your buddy will need to be around 4 in our years before it reaches old age. A 4-year-old dog will be 50, but a 7-year-old dog will be 62, and an 8-year-old dog will only be 64. So, they age faster, but also slower and slower as time passes by. The next time you're celebrating your best bud's birthday, be sure to put lots of candles on the cake and buy even more presents than you normally would. A common misconception is that dogs are colorblind. They're not, but they don't see color exactly as we do. They have trouble distinguishing between their reds and greens. It all just looks like a mash of gray, brown, blue, and even yellowy tones. That's because their eyes lack one of 3 photoreceptors needed to perceive colors fully. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Wrong. Because of their old age, they might need more persistence from you, but it's not impossible. The key here is to be as positive as you can. If you see they're not feeling up to it right now, that's okay. Let them rest, and in a little bit, you can pick the training session back up. Reward still needs to be a big part of the whole ordeal. After Max successfully speaks, give it its favorite biscuit. Then, it'll speak on command whenever you ask it to. That dog has shoes on. They might seem unnecessary, but today the weather's 90 degrees outside. Imagine walking with your bare feet on asphalt during this heat. You'd feel like you're stepping on lava, and so would your pup. Some dogs are better equipped to handle different weather conditions, but dog shoes can prevent your little buddy from harming its paws. It's the same during winter. When it's freezing cold, you wouldn't just walk around without a jacket on, so make sure your buddy is warm too. Dogs with a lot of fur don't need to get their hair cut to feel lighter. They have what's called an undercoat. In winter, it gets thicker, which gives your buddy an extra layer of protection from the cold. Then, during springtime, your dog will shed some of its fur. It's that same undercoat that will keep your dog comfy during hotter days. When you shave a dog's fur, the new one coming in might get curly or entangled. It might just be better to leave it as is. You can also find different alternatives to keep them cool. Keep it in the shade when they're out, and always bring a bottle of cold water with you, so your buddy's always refreshed. At home, you can put damp towels for them to lie on. If you have a garden, you can also turn its sprinklers on and let Max run free. It'll exercise and have lots of fun. Not all dogs are great swimmers, but all dogs love swimming. If yours can't swim all that well, it might be because it has a bulky chest and a large flat head. In fact, it might not even be able to stay afloat. Get it a swimming vest designed especially for dogs. Some people might say a slightly open window is enough to keep a dog in the car. This isn't true, because after spending just a few minutes in a heated or cold car might mean severe health implications for your best friend. Some states even let you let a dog out of the car if you see it in there, to let it breathe. If your dog can't stand mail carriers, it might be because it's trying to protect you. They bark because they're trying to alert you, their pack leader, that the vicious mail carrier is coming. You can fix this by introducing them to one another. This way, your dog will recognize them as a friend and not a villain. Unlike you, your dog isn't yawning because it's sleepy. Yawning is a way for them to show anxiety. If it doesn't like cats and there's one around, it could yawn. Or maybe there's a new person in the house and Max isn't feeling comfortable in their presence. Or you take your dog to a play date, but they're not getting along. Max keeps yawning because he's getting upset. Yawning is also a way to show you it's running out of patience. It might be time for both of you to leave. Dogs eat grass when they're sick, but this isn't always the case. Catching your dog eating grass when you've been talking to your friend for way longer than you should have probably means it's just bored. They do it to be rebellious too, or just because it's fun. It won't be a problem if the grass isn't treated. Either way, just make sure it doesn't eat too much of it. Otherwise, head out to the vet. Even a little bit of chocolate is poisonous for your pup and should be kept hidden away at all times. This includes cocoa powder and baker's chocolate. This applies to cats too. If you suspect that your pet has eaten a large amount of chocolate, take it to the vet's office immediately. Well-trained dogs will do what they're supposed to and obey commands, but don't think they'll never bite you. It can act out of emotion. Imagine your dog's scared. You've put it in an uncomfortable situation with lots of new faces. This has been going on for a while, and Max isn't able to control his emotions anymore. So, a new person tries to reach it to give it a pet and gets punished. Nothing harsh, but it was unexpected. Maybe it felt like it needed to be defensive. Thinking they're protecting and guarding you is another reason why a dog might bite. Or if they're feeling too intimidated by whoever it might be. You've got two dogs and you're about to enter your house. One of them is waiting for you in its bed. It doesn't make a big whoop about it rather than wagging its tail. The other one comes running to the door. It whimpers, jumps, and wags its whole body while running in circles around you. This doesn't mean it loves you more. It just means it's not properly trained yet. Tail wagging doesn't always mean your dog is excited. You can observe a dog's tail to understand what it's feeling. If it holds its tail high but isn't moving it, it's alert but also trying to assert its leadership. Still held high, the tail is moving now. It means the feeling's changed a bit. It's alert but happy. It's still trying to show it's the boss here. But at least it's feeling excited now. When its tail is between the legs, your dog's feeling afraid. Or, if there's an alpha dog around, it might mean your buddy admits its leadership. A tail that's held straight out means the dog is taking in new information, feeling the room. It's not reacting though, it'll stay neutral while doing this. If a dog's tail is wagging fast, it means excitement. The faster they wag their tail, the more excited they are. A slow wag conveys insecurity. It might be because of another dog or person. Now, imagine your dog is wagging its entire body. You even see its hips wagging. This means it's friendly. It might happen when you're in the elevator, and it spots its best friend from the apartment complex. The worst wag of them all is an extremely fast vertical wagging tail. When doing this, your dog can be mean to others. It might be feeling territorial over you. It's best to remove yourself from the situation. If your dog's tail is wagging to the right, it means it's more relaxed. And a left wagging tail means stress.
Now, at some earlier stages of research, scientists reconstructed the megalodon looking like a bigger, just a little more dangerous version of a great white shark. Movies then followed suit, added a couple of details on their own, and ta-da! We've got a marine giant that could grow up to 90 feet long. Well, hold on. Megalodons were usually between 50 and 55 feet, sometimes growing up to 60 feet. For comparison, a bowling lane is 60 feet long, a school bus is around 45 feet, and an average person is 5 feet 10 inches tall. So yeah, not bad megalodon, but still not 90 feet. Its weight was around 50 to 60 tons, which is something like 10 adult elephants or even a Boeing 737. That's just their females though. The ladies were almost twice as big as the males. Another movie versus reality thing. The megalodon had nothing to do with a great white shark. The closest they could be is cousins, because megalodon, in fact, is the last descendant of a completely different lineage of sharks. Plus, its kind is around 3 times bigger than an average great white. It has a shorter nose and a much flatter jaw that almost looks like it's squashed. Also, Meg's pectoral fins are longer than those of the great white sharks. Ancient predators ate a lot, so they needed something to support their weight. They both had an excellent sense of smell, though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight toward their prey and find the softest spots, like exposed legs or underbelly. Megalodon aimed for the fins and tail because of its almost 10-foot jaws and what's considered to be the strongest bite ever. Its teeth could pierce almost anything. Sometimes an entire tooth would be found embedded in the bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of the megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks, the good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe within their thick shells. The Meg probably took those as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Such a diverse diet, and in big amounts. Megalodon would eat about 2,500 pounds of food every day. No wonder it dominated the ocean. Almost 300 teeth in 5 rows, and we're talking about sharp chompers that could grow up to 7 inches long. Even its name stands for giant tooth. Hey, I'm thinking maybe it had a cousin, orthodontia, which means either crooked teeth or deep pockets. Still, Megalodon would change thousands of teeth over a lifetime. Since Meg's teeth weren't that strong, they would often fall out. Then it would get new ones within 1 to 2 days, so it could continue its hunting sessions without any serious interruptions. The same thing happens with modern sharks as well. New teeth replace damaged or worn-out ones. Those teeth falling out were the only thing that helped scientists do any research on the megalodon at all. They found them all around the world. Yep, megalodons were quite some travelers. They lived in all oceans, and their fossils were found on all continents except Antarctica. What, too cold? Since their skeletons were not made of bone but of cartilage, teeth are the only evidence they've ever even existed. They gave scientists an insight into a lot of things, including size. Even with modern sharks, scientists determine their size by the dimensions of only one tooth, and do the same with the meg. Megalodon had the strongest bite of all living creatures on Earth. It would definitely be fun to see the clash between the meg and, say, T-Rex. Sadly, they missed their chance to meet and establish some long-term friendship since dinosaurs went extinct over 60 million years ago. Meg, on the other hand, terrified all the inhabitants of the seas and oceans from 23 to 2.5 million years ago. Where could Megalodon live these days? Well, it would probably love the places modern sharks go to, such as Florida, Hawaii, Brazil, South Africa, or some other tropical paradise. When you think about it, it's not bad at all. Meg, take me with you! Meg itself didn't have any serious competition or a natural enemy, but its infants were too weak to defend themselves. That's why the apex predator had to choose warm, shallow waters with no strong currents to raise its babies. Those, by the way, were around 6.5 feet long, not quite tiny themselves. Scientists actually found some of their juveniles' teeth, so it seems like part of their nursery areas was the coast of Panama, and that's 10 million years old. Okay, time to meet with one of Megalodon's potential rivals, the mighty sperm whale. 45 to 60 feet long, the size sure makes it quite an adversary. Modern sperm whales don't have such big teeth, but their ancestors, which lived around 13 million years ago, were well packed. The largest tooth found was 5 inches wide and 14 inches long. That's something like the biggest soda bottle out there. That would make an interesting combat. Here, we're talking about this giant marine predator, but this is not the only intriguing ancient animal that wandered the oceans. In fact, sharks are some of the oldest creatures on our planet, more ancient than insects, mammals, dinosaurs, even trees. Mass extinction events wiped out most life on Earth. Giant asteroids fell on its surface, continents split up, and so many other things happened. But sharks were there, alive, persevering, apparently with no contact with the outside world, just chilling and doing their thing. The spiny shark was actually one of the first animals with a jaw. Not that it could do much with that jaw, since it was only around 12 inches long. Meg wouldn't even bother around this one, and it wasn't even a real shark, it just looked like one. If you ever wondered how a combination of eel and shark would look like, well, here it is. Eel shark preferred freshwater, was up to 3 feet long, and went extinct around 200 million years ago. Since dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago, the eel shark was probably there to give them warm welcome, prepare a buffet, but the dinosaurs had unfortunately mistaken it for dessert. Now, this predator would get some real screams on a nice sandy beach during a spring break if it was still alive, the Ginsu shark. It was nicknamed after Ginsu knives for a huge mouth of almost 500 razor-sharp teeth. One of this monster shark's hobbies was to go after big turtles. Okay, now seriously, what's with that shark turtle thing? Scissor-toothed sharks. Now we're talking. These guys lived around 300 million years ago and had some strangely shaped heads. The weirdest part were their jaws. This shark didn't shed old and worn-out teeth, but kept growing new ones at the back. Those in the front were then pushed forward, and with age, the shark got a really strange scissor-tooth look. Scientists are still unsure why it had to be like that. Hey, time to call in the orthodon. Even during the Meg's long reign, our favorite ancient predator still wasn't the only scary giant shark in town. For instance, I can't pronounce its name, so I'll just call it Mr. C. Unfortunately, not enough of its fossils were found to get more information, but some research says it had teeth more than 5 inches long. That also implies it could probably grow to be 20 feet long. Oh, and if it only left just a couple more teeth around, I guess the Meg wouldn't be the only movie star from those times. So close, C, so close. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.